What's up, Mike V?
I'm good, brother. And yourself?
Yeah, man, I'm good, man. How's everything? Are you in Africa now, or are you back in the States?
I'm in the States. Just give me 1 second. Let me configure something really quickly.
Okay.
All right, let's see if anyone in the chat can actually hear me. Yeah, push one in the chat if you can hear us. All right. Renaissance, check your text message. I think I'll send it to you now. Just give me 1 second. All right, cool. Let's get started. Check the text, Renaissance man. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 849, Black Politics. Please hit the like button as you come in and share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. There's no docket in the description. There'll be a link in the chat if you want to join and engage in the discussion. And I'm also joined with my co-host and panelist, Sandog. What's going on, bro?
Yo, what's going on, Mike V? It's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just actually came back from Africa, and that you're asking me that a couple of days ago. So had a really good time over there. And sorry I wasn't able to actually come your way. That was kind of my intentions, but didn't work out that way.
Yeah, it's okay, because man, because I would have shouted you out, but I didn't want to kill you with the Roman. You know what I'm saying? So so it's you know what I'm saying, it's good, good thank God for traveling mercies and a safe return home.
Absolutely. Thank you. So
yeah.
Let's get into this.
Yeah.
Black male politics, past, current, and future endeavors. You and I have corresponded offline quite a few times, and I think you have a perspective that hasn't been heard yet. Why don't I give you like 5 minutes to give your introduction into what your position is on the state of black male politics today?
Okay. So my perspective on the state of black male politics is that I believe that what black men are beginning to discover or see is that in politics, flat blackness does not exist. I believe that black men are not fans of what we would call intersectional politics. And ultimately, when you look at black men or American men in general, what they are looking for and what the draw will come from the Republican Party, especially the messaging of it, is what they're looking for, is what all men want, which is something also quintessential to freedom, which is self-reliance, right? And so when you look at the advent of things like the manosphere, or especially the black manosphere, right, it's been this kind of decentralized place of where black men have been comparing notes with one another at all levels of life. And what a lot of black men are, I guess, starting to piece together, or are starting to discover, or I'm not even going to say discover or see. I believe that Black men are not necessarily satisfied with where they are, the material condition of themselves and their communities. And they're looking for ideas and they're looking for answers on how to fix these things. And I think from a political perspective, from the party that they would particularly vote with, the Democratic Party, maybe the messaging hasn't been there in order to reach out to them where they will see themselves as relevant. So let's say, for example, right, when you look at a lot of things that are associated with the left, right, these are not things that appeal to men who desire self-reliance, who desire to be head of household. So when you look at the original manifesto of something like Black Lives Matter, right, that will be certainly off-putting in terms of, how they stated, we're not interested or we don't support, heteronormative homes and patriarchy and all these things and everything else, where historically speaking, Black Americans have been conservative Christian, conservative in certain ways, liberal in others. So you're starting to have a climate where Black men are seeing themselves being pushed out. And then along with things like, let's say from President Biden, you're not Black if you don't vote for me, get your booty on the floor. And then I guess the last one was, no, no voting, no sex, or whatever that commercial was. And so for men who are seeking self-reliance and that ability, in a sense, like I said, to get it out of the mud or pull themselves out of the bootstraps, I don't think in recent years, especially with what the left was, let's say in the 80s or the 90s or somewhere between the 70s and the 90s, I just think that the messaging of it now is, we're not talking about policy, but we're just talking about the messaging. I don't think the messaging of it is appealing to American men in general. So this is where, like I said, so this is where I kind of see it. So right now, a lot of it is in the messaging, and then also I also believe that it's good for Black men to come over into the right, because again, the system balances itself out, right? So in the left, there's a lot of great things as it relates to state institutions, and then in the right, there's a lot of support for non-state institutions. And even the statement that I just said in its entirety is not necessarily a completely fair statement, but as people understand politics. So it's very important that Black men are present on both sides of the spectrum, of American politics. Because again, at the end of the day, racism is it's a team sport. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. I'm just muted so I don't interrupt you.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. So at the end of the day, man, racism is a team sport. And what you want to do is you want to play the game as much as possible. AIPAC is on both sides of the aisle, right? So whether you're Republican or whether you're Democrat, if you get up there and you say you're not going to participate in that AIPAC dinner, then there stands a good chance that you yourself may not become president. And then another thing too, like along with the lines of the Democratic Party, I believe that a lot of momentum was lost for 2 election cycles where they shelved Bernie Sanders. So I think that's something, starting with that put a bad taste in people's mouths. And then with the Biden administration, I believe that most people were okay, despite the Inflation Reduction Act put in place by Biden in the infrastructure bill, which kind of like slowed down inflation or the price of homes and everything else. I think that a lot of dissatisfaction will come from the fact of the foreign wars, right? So Americans will say, look, we have enough problems at home. We have homelessness. We have infrastructure problems. We have all these things going on, and funding wars and genocides and things of that nature are things that we're not that we're not interested in because we want to solve our problems. We want to solve our problems at home, and so ultimately, that's what I believe. I'll give you back the floor, but ultimately, that's what I see it is, and I think it's fair that Black men explore or look out and see, what's out there for them politically, and to engage the entire system and not just simply half of it. So yeah, Mike V, that's it, man. That's my introduction.
No, that's good. I think what you're saying has some relevance, but what I want to actually challenge you on is that you've had Black men on the right. You've had Michael Steele, you've had J.C. Watts, you had Allen West, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. You've had Herman Cain. You've had a number of Black men on the other side, but nothing seems to be materializing for Black men on that side. Would you agree?
No, I would not agree because
Okay.
at the end of it, because again, at the end of the day, especially when I was in the States and I was involved in the Republican Party, like I said, just simply reaching out to Black people was a task in itself. So a lot of people were shut down. It would be as if I was trying to, in a sense, get them to switch religions, right? So a lot of people at that time, they were very adamant. So like, for example, if you go back to when John McCain went to Atlanta, when Barack Obama was running for president, you had people falling asleep, falling asleep while, he was talking about the outreach between the Republican Party and the Black community. There were people yelling at him while it happened. People fell asleep. Some people walked out. So there's a lot of, there's a degree of animosity. The same thing when Ted Cruz was running against Trump in 2016, and in New York City, he tried to, come to the Garden to talk to the constituents of New York City, and people protested it to the point where they didn't even want a conversation with him. And I think, like I said, I think that there are extreme views because again, relationships, right? Relationships go half and half, and I believe that many of the outreach attempts, at least from what I saw while I was in the States and involved, you would have African Americans and minority groups who had absolutely no desire to even hear the message.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in regards to Black men, the state of Black men, I think Black men don't really care about party, but care more about where their interest lies. And so when you go back in history and you start talking about civil rights, voting rights, labor union organization, Black men, or Black people, I should say, but Black men in particular seem to move in the direction of whatever party holds their interests. And if that party happened to be Democratic, or the Democratic Party, let's say post-civil rights, Jimmy Carter, we know that that was one of the anchors for Black men voting in that direction. Now, you did have some Reagan Democrats in that, Reagan Republicans in that same era, but I'm saying from a political architecture and framework, it would seem that the interests of Black men tends to be on the left and materializes on the left. Whereas when it comes to the right, I think there is a seat for Black men, but I don't think there's a voice for Black men at that level. Right now, modern times, we see that Byron Donalds seems to have a bullhorn right now, just temporarily, and that's only been the last 30 to 60 days. He's been really mouthing off in regards to his place within the party itself. He seems to be a very loud voice in the party, but that's only temporary because we don't know what the long-term aspect. We haven't looked at a whole entire election cycle to see how it's working out for him. I don't see him actually advocating for Black men, but more or less advocating for the party itself. And I don't know if that's enough to galvanize Black men to shift to that side. I think they see Byron Donalds, but I don't think they actually see anything physically on the ground happening with Byron Donald in regards to black men being on that side.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Again, politics and business are about relationships, right? So if you don't have a relationship, there's not going to be anything that materializes. So you have to first build that relationship, right? So again, it's like I told you. So the desires, like when you look at, let's say for example, I once had a conversation, you know what I'm saying, with Hood Servative, right? And and the conversation that Hood Servative and I had, and this was on a panel, so it was on Art in the Stall maybe 2 years ago, and Hood Servative said, "Hey, my desire is for black men to start to engage in the ways that we did post Civil War during the period of the radical Republicans." And I think that if you gave black men the opportunity to, I don't think that black men are getting the credit that they deserve. I think that if you were to give black men the opportunity to enter the Republican Party in numbers where their voices could be heard, I think that you would see a little bit of a difference than what you're traditionally used to from hearing out of the Republican Party. I don't think that it will be tit for tat for what you would see, let's say, from the conservative right as it exists now, right? So that is not, like I said, that's not the case. And so the thing is that you're looking at an evolution. And what happens, Mike, with a lot of human beings, the problem is that a lot of times we get caught up in, when you want change to happen, a lot of us get caught up in how we want the change to happen instead of how the change is going to happen, right? So for example, if you go into Christianity, right, Jesus, peace be upon him, is the Messiah of God, right? But the previous people, right? The previous people said, hey, this guy's no Messiah. You know what I'm saying? How can a dusty carpenter come and help us overthrow Rome? We want to overthrow Rome, right? Where are your chariots? Where are the angels from heaven, right? And so as a result, they ended up missing out on the message simply because they didn't like who the messenger was. And so at the end of the day, like I said, for black men, I believe that there's a lot that they can do and a lot that they can make materialize if they had a presence in the party. Because even Barack Obama himself had mentioned on an interview that he had with Charlemagne the God, he was like, again, and he's talking to black people who vote Democrat, right? Remove us conservatives. Barack Obama was like, you guys wanted me to come in here and kick down the doors, right? And demand things, but I couldn't, because either in these halls of power, either we were too few in number or non-existent at all. So if I don't have any leverage, and this is even amongst the Democratic Party itself, and he's saying, if I don't have the support and the leverage in these certain places of power, then I'm gonna have to play nice, and I'm gonna have to accommodate in order to get something out of the deal or some of what you want. So, like I said, I think for me personally, for African Americans, if you're looking to change your material condition, you have to put away the whole concept of fighting with one arm behind your back. Because here's the thing: the United States, in and of itself, was formed by the idea of making more of a perfect union, right? And I think one of the dangers in American politics that's polarizing is that there's one word that I would say that describes the ultimate sin of all American politics, and that's called expediency, right? So the founding fathers knew that, hey, slavery isn't the best idea, but for the sake of expediency, right, and we don't have to go back to King George II on our knees because we ran out of money, we got to let this ride, and hopefully somebody down the line is going to fix it, right? Same thing for the national debt, right? We kick the can down the road, hoping that somebody in the future is going to show up and fix it. And so, and the overall truth of things, right, I think that Americans will find out, or black people in particular will find out, that changing certain things, changing certain things will not necessarily be expedient, like I said, as expedient as they want to, but they do need to be involved. They do need to be involved on both sides. So, according to Barack Obama, even if, even with most Black people voting Democrat, he still didn't have the backing that he needed to help Black people look for the substantive changes that they were looking for.
Let me ask you this, because you've had John James run for office in Michigan. He's elected. You had Daniel Cameron in Kentucky run for office and lose. And you've also had a number of Vernon Jones. You had a number of Black men running on the Republican ticket. What I don't see is Black men on the ground, let's say the manosphere, getting behind those candidates, for one, and two, I don't see those same candidates backing each other up. And so I don't think there's a lot of cohesion between the voting class of Black men, if we use the manosphere as an example, and the candidates running for office. It seems like everybody's kind of decentralized in their politic. And I don't know how you actually, how would you actually help or advise them to, to have some galvanization around that? How do you organize them?
What I'm here. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
So, yeah. So I'm putting my words together because, again, one, I've been out of America for 20 years, right? So I can't tell you what's happening on the ground, right? Because all I know is what I have. All I know is what I have read, and what I would state is that at this particular time, they're still growing the numbers, right? They're still growing the numbers in order to form what that cohesive voice is going to be, right? So that's something that's happening in formation. So let's say, for example, on the other side of the aisle, you might be a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of you have the blueprint for a helicopter, and these guys might be jumping off the cliff with the feathers, on their arms trying to fly. But but in the same breath, it is still a political evolution that needs to take place, right? Because at least for me, the issue is that for Black men, what's the problem in regards to, so whether I agree with their line of thinking or whether I don't, it's their right and it's their prerogative to vote the way that they want to vote and to find change in the way that they want to find change. And so when you look at the Democratic Party as a whole, right, there's some kind of break in a line of communications where not just Black men, but men across the board are looking at the left and saying that this is not a place that speaks for me or looks out for my interests, right? And so you have to examine. So on the left, you would have to examine why these things happen, right? Because again, for me, yes, I'm Republican, but I also believe that you're supposed to approach politics from the space of opportunity in regards to what's going to serve you well at the time, right? And so for a lot of guys, this is what they're looking. They're looking for the reassertion of masculinity or traditional masculinity and in American society, and they're looking to going back to working jobs, becoming head of household, and all these different things, right? So when you look at some of the successes of the Biden administration, right, we also have to understand that Black America is not a monolith, right? And so people get punished for it, but at the end of the day, let's say, for example, when you look at the Biden-Harris administration forgiving student loans, right? So if less than 30% of Black men have gone to college, how does that legislation mean anything to them? Or how is that significant to them, right? Or if Biden is adding jobs into the economy around manufacturing, especially when you're designing chips and all of this stuff and everything else, right? So again, if you're looking at certain issues like Black children not being able to read, or the fact that Americans overall themselves are not prepared for the 21st century or the fourth industrial wave. How do these things begin to mean anything to these people? So when you look at, I'm just saying, so when you look at change, right, you would have to look at it, under the legislation and then the demographics that it would impact.
Yeah. Let's go to Renaissance, man. Go ahead.
No, okay. I just had hey, what's up, Sandog? What's up, Mike?
What's going on, Renaissance, man? Shout out to you, man. I've heard you in the ether, man. Just shout out to you, man.
Yeah. No, we used to connect a few years back on Arts Panel. I don't know if you remember.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while. But now I remember your politic as well. The one thing I would I know you said you've been out of the States, but one thing you sort of alluded to is basically, Black men voting and engagement. Would you not say, or at least from when you maybe were here, that there may be a lack of political engagement from the standpoint of people really knowing what they want and going to get policy? Because what I hear you saying is people need to be involved in both sides, which is fair. But then I also hear, at least the way I'm taking it, is that Barack Obama saying, hey, I can only get so much done with basically people behind me. Now, if you look at, where Black people and where Black men are as far as participation, correct, Democrats do get 90+% of the Black vote that actually turns out to vote. But when you look at the share that's not registered to vote, that doesn't turn out to vote, that doesn't count in that 90%. So I guess my question to you, wouldn't it be more strategically sound to move as sort of a block, as in increase, if you're giving 90% to one party and laying out an expectation, doesn't it make sense to also try to galvanize as much of that base to actually turn out and support? So that 90% is, say if it's 90% of 10 million people turning out to vote versus trying to get that number to like 90% of 20 million turn out to vote. Doesn't that make more sense than sort of diluting that vote as far as getting things done?
Yeah, well, one, I don't disagree with you. And then two, Mike will tell you the last time Mike and I talked on the panel, right? So even when I was in the States, right? Again, and I'm talking about what, some 20 something, years ago, right? Let's talk about the voting bloc of the Democratic Party, right? So getting men to vote in Black America has always been an issue, right? So getting men out to vote in general. Again, maybe it's where I was between New York City and Alabama, but getting those guys out to vote, registered to vote, that in and of itself was an issue in terms of their participation.
And we can even throw in not just sorry to cut you off real quick, not even just voting, but engagement. Whether it be joining campaigns, running for office yourself, getting on school board, showing up at council meetings, donating money. I think we have to expand the conversation to more than just voting. I don't know if maybe you disagree.
No, correct. But and this is, and again, and that's what I'm saying. So remember, because again, remember, I know that you guys can expand on what I'm saying, and you're hearing me correctly, right? When I talk about engagement, right? So when I talk about engagement, it's just that at least for me, I see things in the terms of evolution, right? And so what you're seeing, at least from Sandog's perspective, is the beginning, right? It's the beginning of Black men being able or starting to engage these systems more and more, because what I believe in the past was, again, Black men believed in flat Blackness and thought that, okay, well, at the end of the day, the women, whoever else is out there, they're all voting or support, these coalitions that we have, that they're all voting and supporting my best interest, right? Because remember, even on the left, right, you have things working against you. Since I came to the space, I talked about hard power, soft power, smart power. So if you want to look at the challenges of Black America, whether they are internal or external, you would have to look at I would say you would have to look at things as if it was an autism spectrum, right? And so it's all about what brand of the BS that you can't stand, right? So remember, let's go back to intersectional politics, right? So Black people or Black men forming their own identity. Because remember, for so long, we have been told what we were. So you have African, you have Negro, you got colored, you have Afro, African American. Now we got subgroups of Muslims, Hebrews, Indigenous Americans, and then now we're people of color, right? And part of you having a political agenda, the first step in it is for you to have an identity. So if we've been struggling for so long to put together an identity for ourselves within the United States as a group of men, then there are going to be a lot of other things that are just as equally hard to figure out.
Well,
right?
I gotta push back slightly on that in the sense of like, when you say the identity, I get, hey, Negro, Black, but I don't hear many Black men referring to them. Maybe it's me. Someone speak up if I'm hearing different. I don't hear many Black men, I guess, referring to their group as people of color. I mean, I think Black men, from what I've seen, have pretty much settled on the fact that, hey, they're Black men or they're Black people, if you want to talk, and that a lot of these terms, people of color, Latinx, Latine, all of these things tend to be things that come out of the Democratic Party and its sort of its brain trust or its apparatus, but these aren't necessarily things that people readily embrace, because you got a lot of Latinos who push back on this Latinx labeling as well.
Yeah, but this is what I'm trying to say. So at least from Sandog's perspective, right? So you have to remember. So for me, like when I look at the Democrats, so a lot of people will look at the Republican Party and they'll say, okay, well, what are the interests of Black men there, right? And again, you would have opportunities that you could take advantage of and exploit, and I'll come back to that, right? But let's say, for example, when you look at the left in the Democratic Party, right? So you have all of these groups. This is where most of Black people are, and so when Black people put up, let's say, the argument for reparations, right? So how many of these other subgroups will get behind African Americans, right, and their causes, especially when you get one for when you get into reparations, to include the fact that a lot of these people too might be second or third generation, and these people are coming from populations where they were subject to colonial rule, and as a result of that colonial rule, anti-Blackness is a cornerstone of their culture, right? So when you're looking at Latin America, who would, for the most part, genocide their Black population and import people from Europe, right? Mexico not recognizing its Black population until the 21st century. Again, no question with whatever comes out of Asia and all of these other places, right? And look, I know it's a nuanced and convoluted discussion, but even now, like when you would have people, what y'all call it, from the AAIPC community, wanting to tear down, affirmative actions, for whatever their reasons are, right? And it's just, it's like I said, right? So you're going to take things in a sense, because if you look at Black people, right, in our politics, it appears that a lot of our politics has been based around acceptance, more or less, instead of tangibles. So in an offline conversation that Mike V and I had, and shout out to Rael and shout out to the nameless protagonist, right? Because we've been having these questions real heavy, these conversations real heavy offline. And if you wanted to break America down to a Black perspective, I would say your left and right looks more like your left is an intelligentsia, and your right would be kind of like what Booker T. Washington wanted to do in regards to the development of Black business class economics and having your own institutions. And I think that this is what most Black people want. I don't think that Black people are necessarily are have been satisfied with the outcomes of integration. I don't think that it has delivered. I don't think that it has delivered the things that Black people want, and and this is why now, in a sense, from my perspective, that you're starting to see the risks and the claims that are rising up.
Wait,
right?
Let's go to Nagone and then go to DC.
Okay. Okay.
Nagone, you've been on the ground the last election cycle doing the door knocking. Can you chime in on what you think Black men are talking about on the ground, or what your experiences with Black men on the ground in terms of politics and in voting?
Yeah, primarily what I've seen for Black men, and what I've primarily talked with, we had Black men engage in some campaigning. Black men really, from what I've seen, are very much engaged with really jobs. A lot of Black men are really concerned about working well, having good jobs, being able to work, of which many Black men are working, but they're constantly looking at that. I know a lot of us get into the whole masculinity piece and all that kind of stuff, and I just don't hear that on the ground. What I've heard, and you saw me last summer when we were going door to door and registering voters, working hard. It was tough. I'm not gonna lie. Knocking on doors is tough, and talking with people. It really came down to cost of living and jobs. That's what it really came down to: cost of living and jobs. That's what I saw Black male interests. So that's when I start getting into Black male interests, and we start talking about what are our interests. I don't see where so much, and this is just me, and then talking with other people, where the Republicans and all that are looking out for those key interests, what Black people are looking for on the ground: getting your money right, working well, and then literally dealing with your cost of living, so forth. I mean, everyone's concerned about, what are you paying for this, that, and the third. That's certainly fair, but at the end of the day, people really want to be well suited working. They want to have good opportunities, and I think that's what Black people are really looking for. When I talk to a lot of younger kids, certainly when I talk to younger Black males, it's certainly the cost of education. And going to school. We have a lot of young Black men going to school today. A lot of going, even though the numbers are showing you, hey, more Black women are. We see that's across the board with women, across men, and that's across all demographics as well. More going to school, but certainly we have a lot of young Black men going to school, going to trade schools, and so forth. And the costs in education. So these are some of the keys that we're really looking at with respect to these younger folks and their interests. That's what I was seeing, and some of the young Black men who we were registering, who were working with our voter registration campaigns and so forth, were really keen on getting Black people involved, because, and of course, we're looking at issues of crime and people going to jail and being unfairly treated and so forth. All of that is just a part of the landscape, of our landscape in Black America. So all those issues were coming forward. Not to say, that other things weren't coming up, but that's what I was running into a great degree of. And of course, the whole abortion thing and all that, and on the other side, I want to get on to that, but yeah, those are some of the primary issues that I think I was really running into a great deal of, and I think that has not changed. That has not changed a lot. I don't believe.
Let's go to DC. DC being in the HQ. What are you seeing on the ground when it comes to politics and Black male voting?
All right. Can I be heard? Guys? Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
You're audible.
All right. Thank you. I mean, mine just is a very simple question. And shout out to Sandog. Nice to hear from you, brother. I haven't, spoken to you in a while, but I hope everything is well.
Yeah,
for you
man.
and the family and the baby and everything. So
yeah, man. All is well, man. I just been following the advice that Mike V gave me through COVID, man. So I've been back in school and working.
All right. So hopefully we can have a discussion, because there may be some contention with the things that we disagree with, but just make sure that you understand that it's not personal. Not for me. You know what I mean?
I've never been I mean,
Okay.
you pedals would be better. I've never look, and that's what I'm saying. It's like I said, it's okay to disagree, and this is what I'm saying. So even for Black men, when you go back into identity, when we talk about verbiage, so the brother that spoke between you, and I know you're going to speak, when he said not necessarily masculinity, but again, for jobs, being able to make your way through life, and all of these things, that goes with masculinity, like positive, positive male identity, right? So hence why you would get guys who would join gangs, or at least on my side of the world, radical groups and everything else, because with a lack of economic opportunity, right, these guys are going to try to find ways to establish some form of positive male identity, and
But also, but I
sometimes
also
the not so great. So I'm just all I'm saying is that I am agreeing with you. Like I said, I'm agreeing. But that's what I'm trying to say. And this is what I'm saying. So in these discussions, right, what we're trying to do is that we are trying to articulate and try to find the verbiage. And I really do believe, because when you go into your 10 operational steps of diplomacy, right, an established identity is the first step, and it's extraordinarily important. And that for me, in this discussion, is one of the things that's at the crux of the matter. So I'll shut up. My apologies.
Okay,
No,
I would also like to say very quickly, education. That's a key thing. When you have a lot of people moving outside, a lot of these people are concerned about going to school, being able to get education, and it being affordable. Just like now we have programs at Westchester Community College and some of the other community colleges in New York where you can get cybersecurity training and these other kind of programs you can go in and get training for very little money. And some are getting scholarships for it where it's not costing you any money at all. And a lot of brothers want access to education that it's not prohibitively expensive. And that's another key point, because once you start getting educations, then or getting opportunities at getting educations and getting certified in certain areas and so forth, you see the allure for gangs and these kind of things really start to dissipate. We know that the nexus between education and crime is one that moves in a countercurrent type of pattern. So if one has more education, the less they're going to be access to getting into criminality. We know that in the jail system and so forth. So we know people who get their GED and get a college education in school, they don't come back to prison. They just don't. And our system is designed to really help to employ people who are better educated, at least to a high school level, and that's a key. So that's a key part of your jobs and so forth. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that, because all these factors are playing together, and that's very important as far as where our interests are for brothers. Anyway, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's actually supposed to be for DC.
Yeah. DC. Okay, DC. You got a DC. Go ahead.
All right. No problem. I'm glad we got that out the way. My first question to brothers in the body politic, and I'll speak on how it's viewed here in the DMV or the Washington D.C. area in particular, because there are two different types of people from the DMV. There are people that stay in the Baltimore metropolitan area, what I would call the Northern VA politics area, and then like the immediate DC PG kind of grip, where those are like the kind of like the heartbeat of what DC is in the Black politics. That is a completely different thing. Those are three different distinctively different people that you're talking about when you talk about Black politics in the DMV and the DC area in particular. Just to speak on Black men in particular, my first question, because going off party affiliation seems to trigger people. My first question is, what do you want? What do you want from your politics when you participate? And most of the time, what I hear is a very progressive type of idealistic type of stance. I want this for Black boys, especially when you're talking about Black men. I want to have educational opportunities, job opportunities specifically pointed out for Black men. Even when you go back to Dr. T's 17-point agenda, if I'm not mistaken, it's 17 points.
I think it's 17 points now.
It's a very liberal agenda. It's not conservative. And what I want brothers to understand, and this is even for Sandog, this is for anybody that's so-called speaking black or saying black in front of anything, you're automatically labeled as a liberal in Washington circles. That's automatic. Anytime you talk about, I want to do this for black men, especially black men, that is radical left, extremely progressive, extremely. And I want that to be kind of put on the table, because when I hear these disagreements and things of that nature, when it's like, that's not even a left and right argument, that is a left to far left argument that we're having. So you're saying that what's going on in the current process is not doing enough for black boys. If that is the case, then you want a more progressive movement. That is not something that you can do on the other side. That is not the way that they talk about politics over there. Sandog would tell you, they don't speak in that kind of terms when it comes down to racial progress. They don't speak individually to what black men are going through. That's not the language.
So what would be gained on that other side that the left isn't providing for black
information? I look at it as kind of balancing the scales. If you're truly deciding to say, hey, look, this has always been my politics. My politics are grounded in more than just race, because there is a space for that. It's grounded in basically more of a social, economic type of grounding, to
Excellent.
where I feel more comfortable dealing with these people over here than over there. But I do still have an understanding that I am a black person. See, because to me, even there's two different types of conservatives. Those are the ones that say, okay, I have to forget about my blackness to become a kind of shield for what the right is doing, defending the bullshit. And then there are others that I know, or like kind of like what Sanzog presents, where there's more of a nuance there. They understand what the positioning is, but they want to fight from that standpoint. And I understand that too. See, that I don't have a problem with, because then I can work with somebody like a Sandog, even though we're on different sides of the aisles, but we want the same things. We're just going about it in a different way. That's all. So it shouldn't be too much of a conflict when it comes down to trying to get something done. So I would say more so the information piece and being able to kind of see it from both sides, because everything on the left is not all rosy. It is a lot of misses on the left. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. I just choose to fight on that side because that's where most of the actual discussion is happening, even though it includes other things that I totally disagree with. But the things that I cannot get down with, and especially being in the area that I'm in, and being from where I'm from, I just don't have the stomach to tolerate the racism. Now, I know the Sandog, you haven't been here in 20 years. The body politics being here, it has tremendously shifted. Brother, if you've been here during the election of President Obama, and if you, I would imagine that you would have been around in a DC kind of area, it would have shifted your belief in the people that you're talking to, because what would end up happening, and I know this from people that I know that were lifelong Republicans that are black people, right, or conservatives to a degree. It's like they made it so unbearable to be in the room and discuss with them, because they had such an animus towards Barack, just presence. Forget his politics, just his presence of being in the office that long. And the things that he did.
Wasn't it Joe Wilson who yelled out, you're a liar?
Look, man, it even goes beyond that. We talking about from Secret Service not wanting to protect this man. Now that never happened. When have you ever heard Secret Service speaking at a bar in DuPont Circle talking about, I don't want to protect him and his monkey kids on record? That is unheard of. You are under oath. You are under oath to protect with your life. I don't think people understand that. That is not something that you even should even. First of all, nobody should even know that you're a Secret Service agent. Period. When you drink it, that's just non grata. You can't do that. You see what I'm saying? And for that to even get out, for that to even be on record, it lets you know how loosely everything is affiliated. And just one more thing, just speaking about what took place earlier this year with the whole so-called insurrection. I don't want to, like, get this channel struck, but just speaking on that just really, really quickly, they had to basically not allow half of the people that was supposed to be protecting that particular, response, because they were already compromised. Now think about that, Sandal.
Mm-hmm.
Half of the security detail. We talking about police from different jurisdictions all over the country, originally around West Virginia, you know what I'm saying, Southern Maryland, VA, all these different areas where they said, you know what, we got to cut half of this, and that's the reason why you had that situation go down as it did, because it wasn't enough people out there. They knew that it was going to be trouble. They knew it. So it was already spoken about, but the fact that they had to cut half of the security detail because they were already compromised security-wise should let you know everything that you know about the current climate that we're dealing with now. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a different climate now that has been radicalized by the Tea Party. Let me just say this really, really quick, because I really want to hit home with this, because this is not really about you. You know what I mean? This is about people that jump on the political side and they attack and say, well, they haven't done enough. Well, you know that is a progressive argument. I would agree with you if that's what you're talking about, but that argument is on this side. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's on this side of the house to have that argument and to talk crazy and to do those things to get those people up out the paint and put people in there to replace them. That's how you get that done. You can't argue from the other side and just be basically a political shield for people that didn't, number one, never promised you or said they're going to do anything for you. That's number one. So you can't hold them to anything. Number two, it's not in their best interest to protect you and to basically put in for your group. It's not in their best interest to do that. And number three, if the numbers get too lopsided, and you know this, if you get too many black men showing up at the Republican convention, there's going to be issues. There's going to be issues, bro. There's going to be issues because you have a white nationalist party that has basically ingrained themselves into the party now. They have basically ingrained themselves. QAnon, all of these guys, these wild right wing nuts, they have ingrained themselves into the party, and they want to represent and show out during the Republican convention. They do not want to have suited and booted black men, about 1,000 Kevin Samuels walking up in there. I would like to see it. I like to see it and see what the response is, because maybe that can wake up everybody that's there and they can see, okay, this is not exactly where I need to be. But that's all I wanted to say to just kind of start off. That's how I look at the body politic when it comes down to black men right now. It's just kind of fractured in those kind of groups.
We'll go to Sandog and then we'll go to MOT.
Okay, so correct, DC. One, I'm not disagreeing. One, you're talking to a former Army officer, right? So I've had soldiers who were not my soldiers per se, but there are soldiers who are members and who are affiliated with said organizations, right? Everything that you just discussed took place in the Republican Party. Remember, after Reconstruction, what happened, right? The party sold out the African Americans in the South in order to get the presidential election of 1877, right? And then you get the pullout, of the Northern troops, and everything goes downhill. But and then when you're talking about the Republican Party is something that works two ways, right? So in terms of group demographics, not necessarily. It works in the sense of individuals and institutions, right? So remember, guys, when I first came to this space, and DC, you can vouch for me, when I first came to this space, didn't I say that the language has to change to business, to economics, right? I said, okay, from my side of the aisle, I'm talking 21st century institutions and 21st century infrastructure, right? So to your point, right? When I talk, I don't sit and I don't talk in terms of, like I said, in terms of race. We can have a debate for later, because at least for me, and my politics, I think the attachment, the attachment to black in certain ways it's like a landmine for remove white people. It's like it's a landmine for Black America in and of itself, right? And we can have that discussion. We can have that discussion later, right? So Republicans, or especially minorities who are Republicans, are people who tend to have individualistic interests, right? It's not a. It's so when Mike V was talking about, like, getting the word out, I would say you would have to have a lot more of us, because, like DC said, the guys who will be where I'm at are individualistic. And what happens is, for Black people, whatever your interests are, again, coming from being a military officer, right? Even for those who play sports, right? What you don't want is politics becomes polarizing, in a sense, where there's one group of people over here and one group of people over there. And so you're gonna have to balance things out with as much of a presence, like I said, as you can. And at the end of the day, intersectional politics for a lot of Black men is a major, like I said, again, it's a major turnoff. Just like DC just admitted, there are a lot of things that I just can't get with. And that's why I said that we have to treat this like it's a spectrum, right? Because DC will look at the Republican Party and be like, I cannot F with that. Sandog, best of luck to you. And then I'm looking at DC, right? I'm looking at DC and the coalitions and everything else, and I'm like, fam, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, fam, at least where I'm at, I know what I'm dealing with, and you got a bunch of people ready to stab you in the back over there like it's the Ides of March, right?
Let's
So
see, here's what I would say, and I'm sorry. I just want to just get this in real quick. Hold on to your point real quick. What I would say is that it works in reverse. So as you said, right? Because we know that most of the white nationalists are on that side. So they make the decision to say, I cannot F with, even if they have more liberal viewpoints. You understand what I'm saying, right? Like more liberal viewpoints, they will probably fit better in the so-called left. They have decided, I'm gonna vote race first, right? White people in this country have decided that, right? There's one party that leans to that type of vision, right? Even though both parties are race first parties, you understand what my point is. One is more outwardly with it, and just like one is more outwardly with the so-called sexual component. I'm gonna tell you that if you flip those sides, right, and you look at white men as being like Black men, the Black men that can't stand that side, the white men that cannot stand the so-called racial dynamic, they said bump that, like how I made the decision to say, even though I may support some of those ideals and things of that nature, I can't mess with that over there because it's too many N-words over there. Seriously, I can't do that, even though it may be in my best interest to do so. So I'm going to stay over here where they restrict funding, they restrict Medicare, they restrict kind of like social services that would probably help out my state, Mississippi, Alabama, the Louisianas of the world. You see what I'm saying? Where you have these people making a decision where they know it would benefit them to get the so-called subsidies and things of that nature, more contracting with government assistance and things of that nature to help out their group. But the fact that they have decided, you know what, if that's going to help out 30% of the Black people that live in this state, even with the water crisis in Michigan, it's the same thing. Like the politics, man, the people choose are always very personal. You see what I'm saying? And then it just straps out to the group. We can't eliminate that. It's not just about the individual. You see what I'm saying? Individually, right? Individually, I'm not a felon. Individually, I'm not uneducated. Individually, I'm not so-called what you would deem Pookie or Ray Ray, beyond popular belief, how people have tried to put me there, but I'm not there. I don't support the LGBTQ community. I do know about the racial kind of neglect that happens on the left. I have a very unique understanding of that. But there's only one place where you can call that out. You cannot call that out on the right. That's just the fact of the matter, Sand Dog. And like I told you, if you are
Well,
here, I could kind of make it more clear to you if you was here in the States to see it. Because when you're overseas and you're kind of like still getting that kind of support from the government, but you're not so-called, you're sort of like amoral, you're not really politically officiated, so you can kind of live your life within the actual location that you're in, wherever you're at overseas, and kind of just be an American, where there really isn't a party. When people see you, they know, okay, that is an American, that's an American person. You know, like it's not, that's a Democrat, that's a Republican. It's not kind of like siloed into groups at that point. But when you on ground, when we're here in HQ, we're dealing with it on the ground. People are going to make you make a decision. They're going to make you decide on what side of you, on the politics you're going to be on. Because number one, can I share information with you? Number one, right? Are you going to betray me? Republicans think like that, bro. White Republicans, they're like, yo, I don't know who you are. When it really comes down to it, can I use you as a shield to talk down on these other people that's coming for us on the right? Because it's a very useful tool. That's all I'm saying. Like. And this is only dealing with the so-called political choices. That's what I'm saying. If you're going to choose to deal with politics, that's where we're at this moment. It's not very grounded in anything that's tangible. So I made a pragmatic decision, because if it wasn't it, then I wouldn't participate. But I would try to kind of soften my stance towards being critical one way or the other, because I know that I'm not participating at the end of the day. You see what I'm saying? But once I kind of like put my vote into the arena, I knew, okay, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to go 2 feet in, I got to see, okay, it's some places, man, where brothers are just not even participating, bro. We're not there. We're not showing up. But we're complaining online and on social circles. We're saying things, but we're not showing up. And see, the thing, what you can say about black women, you can say a lot of things about black women. Guess what they do, though? Even beyond the money, guess what they do? They show up, bro. They're politically active. You don't have to sit there and say, I'm going to have a so-called separate agenda just for black men and boys. If you show up, and if enough of us show up and we make our voices known, you see what I'm saying? That's a black man thing. If we make our voices known to where we can get past this nonsense of disagreeing with each other and peacocking from a weak standpoint, and we can be honest with each other within the system and kind of talk some real ish, then we can put something on the table to really go forward. But until then, man, we're dealing with segmenting groups, and we're going to be pulled one way or the other, bro. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry for the interruption.
No, it's cool. But I get what you're saying, right? But I operate in spaces where we're non-existent, right? So again, at the time when I was in the military, very few of us were combat arms officers. I was there. Very few of us are at the higher levels of ranks and defense contracting companies. I was there. Very few of us are at high levels within shipping and distribution, right? In regards to international trade, right? Again, I was there. And one of the things that I will put into place is this. And Mike V and I said this to Mike V a long time ago. African Americans, and you've heard me say this as well, integration did not yield to you what you desire. Because remember, integration is also a skill. So politics and business diplomacy comes with a lot of accommodation, right? So we decided to integrate into this society. So look at the logic, right? It's only expected that you would deal with this. So for me, when I was a young man and I began to study African American history, when you integrate your kids into Alexander H. Stevens High School, the vice president of the Confederacy that gave the cornerstone speech, what kind of outcomes you think you're going to have? Either that process will destroy your children, or they're going to have outlooks that you can't swallow. So we have to accept the fact that we integrated into this society, right? Because freedom, as I understand it, is when you're separated from a circumstance or another. When you're separated from previous people in a circumstance. Economic freedom, as I understand it, is defined as the ability to access natural resources and infrastructure unabated. So in terms of what the overall Black concept of freedom is, I am at a complete loss. Again, you guys know that I come from a Garveyite, type of background as well. So when I look at it in terms of my education in regards to military, my finance education, my economics education, when you go into the civil rights movement, right? Right? Malcolm X and others will say so, that your people who are sellouts, for the most part, are integrationists. So since you've integrated these types of things, DC, at least from my outlook, whether I signed up for it or not, but history made that decision for me. And now I have to deal with what's in front of me. The battlefield, the market, the landscape, at the end of the day, is what it is. Because what African Americans are ultimately, or from what you guys are saying, from what you're ultimately looking for, I don't think that integration delivers you what it is that you are ultimately looking for in regards to what would have been laid out.
When did I bring up integration though, Sandog? I never brought it up. And just before you go, MOT, let me just say this, and I'm gonna shut up though. Let me say this real quick. White people in this country do not view themselves like this. They say they're individuals, but they move as a group. We say that we're a group. Hold on. We say that we're a group, but we move as individuals. Now think about that, Sandor. Think about that. Think about what you're saying and correlate that to what I just said. And it's a fact, bro. You can line it up to all the voting polls and going back all the way since 1776, man, when the first president was elected, how they voted in this country to deal with the Negro problem here. It has always been on the books, man. It has always been on the books. That is not something that's ever went away, period. So it's always discussed. You can ignore it, but people make political decisions based off of that. That's just a fact.
You're not hearing what I'm saying. What I'm saying, I'll say this and I'll be quiet. I promise you. What I'm saying is that these people are present across the spectrum. Like I said, treat it like the autistic spectrum. Let the Republican think it has to evolve. That's all I'm telling you. You need to be there. So what happens? LGBTQ is nothing more than the modern day equivalent of $5 Indians. Right?
No, you have to be here, bro. You have to be here to understand you have to be here to understand the actual. But I'm saying, because I understand what you're saying, Sandog, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm saying our contention here is just the fundamental understanding about what the reality is. You're talking about Black people responding to white people. That doesn't correlate, even when they don't even know that they're doing it. There is an ignorance with us when it comes down to politics. I grant it, that is true. Even with economics, everything, the sexual component, making bad decisions, all of it, being responsible. I grant you all of that. That is a fact. But what I'm trying to say to you, as far as the body politic, there is a fraction of people that would never go for what you're talking about. No, I'm out on that. No, I'm not gonna deal with them just because that's not their politics, man. And you got to understand that is a grievance that hasn't been dealt with in this country. And see, that's why this whole class versus race versus gender, that's why that argument exists. But you best believe, man, when it comes down to America, from the very beginning, the lines that was forcibly drawn here in this country has always been race. And if Black men is a threat to them, as far as that is concerned, that's why they noodle. Why do you think that there's no strong voices on the right when it comes down to Black men? Think about that. The strongest voice on the right that is Black is Candace Owens, correct? As far as talking shit, talking crazy, that's the strongest one. And you see how they almost canceled her, and she's a Black female. It goes deeper than what you're saying, bro. That's all I'm saying. Like, it is a deeper discussion that need to get nuanced. That's all. And I don't want to keep it surface.
I
We can
get
keep
what
it
you're
surface. We can keep it surface.
man.
We keep talking back and forth on it, but I'm just saying.
It's surface, right? But but to your point, so what I'm sharing with you is the private sector, because I'm still in the private sector, right? So
what percentage of us are in the private sector that works in high levels of military? You know that I understand that. I had a discussion with you about what I thought about the ending solution was going to be, right? Yeah. Remember what I said? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it coming to fruition? I'm saying, is it coming to fruition? What I said to you like 7 years ago, is it coming to fruition? Is it coming to fruition though? Do you see the tea leaves of how it's coming to this end point that where we're going to end up being anyway?
But all I'm trying to say is this, right? You didn't bring up integration. I'm talking about how you get from A to B, right? All I'm talking about is how you get from A to B, right? And all I'm saying is that this is.
I have a very quick question. What is A and what is B?
Okay. So we're talking about. So you're talking about Black men's engagement in the political system, and that's A, right? Black men's engagement in the political system and what they want, right? And what they want, right? So this is the history of the country. Well, the political parties, the history of the political parties, that's A, and then Black men's engagement and what they want out of it.
I can tell you how we did it in the Denver metro area.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Sandog, I hate to break this to you, but I'm in the same field that you're in, all the way down to the T. You've never heard me on no panel try to leverage what I was doing with the military as a reason to not know what's going on the ground in the country of origin. You have to understand that you are behind on everything. Like, it's not just you. It's most people who I talk to who live overseas and who have not stepped on the United States for at least years. They have the exact same talking points. They are not here on the ground and they don't care because they're going to be taken care of regardless of what happens. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. How we fix it in the Denver metro area. The moment you bring your self-esteem based issues into the political conversation, we cut you from the conversation. I don't care and I don't give a damn about your self-esteem issues. No party is going to make you feel good as a man. That's a self-esteem based issue that politics is not going to solve for you. Parenting should have done this for you. There's nobody who's going to be able to just give that to you, give you something to be prideful and proud of when you don't have a level of participation. The problem is we're bringing you up to speed on things that you should already be at, so that way we can have a left-right conversation about where we're going at forward. We're trying to get the particulars down on the actual history when you're not here. I mean, but this type of conversation that we're having now, it should be had behind the scenes. How we fix it in the Denver metro area is very clear. The moment you start talking is, and it wasn't called flat blackness back then, but it was still self-esteem based issues that make them want, you got to make me feel good to be a part of your group. It's like, hey man, there's a lot of people here, a lot of people who's been participating, and they're not rolling through the door asking for these type of things up front. At the end of the day, you have to have a level of literacy about the system that you want to engage in. You're not going to skip the literacy piece and then come through and trying to wrap yourself around the spectrum of people who don't care about the process. That's what you're trying to bring in. You're trying to bring in the people who need to feel good about what they're actually doing. We don't need those people here. We don't need those numbers here. Because here's what we did in the Denver metro area. We gave these people free busing, free access to actual classes and things to actually be more productive. You want to know what happened? Mm-hmm. Those people stopped showing up. Less of them showed up. Why? Because they got something for free. And guess what they did? They went right back into hostage-taking mode. Well, what else are you going to do? We're not going to show up. You know what we're going to do? We're not going to do anything else for these people. And if you pick up this microphone and you try to draw attention to yourself, you're going to have a whole bunch of people tracking you down to make sure that this never happens again. At the end of the day, you're going to learn about this system that you're going to be participating in. No one is going to come at you at your level. You have to be able to come up to where we're at. We're not going down there to where you are. Oh, you're talking down to us. You're talking down to us by not understanding the history and the facts on the ground. So in essence, we have to start off the conversation by bringing you up to speed while you're just trying to get your ish off about where you're currently at in society overseas. I'm in the same place where you're at with the military. I'm just in the United States, and I still participate in the political process. And yes, most of my stuff, military industrial complex, the actual Denver metro area, lots of money going in through that. But at the end of the day, you got to have a level of political literacy so that way we can have this conversation. Integration did work. You want to know why? Aren't you integrated into the biggest brown people killing machine in the entire world and you live overseas? Did you have that opportunity 50 years ago? No, you didn't. So why are we even talking about any of this stuff?
Well,
the reason why all of these things come into play is because you can't play the game that's here. So now you have to drag in all of these politically ignorant people and have us actually try to make a place for these people. I'm not trying to make a place for them. You're going to play the game that's here. You're going to show up. The agenda's already set. You're going to have to pick up the actual platform to where you're actually at. As an expansion team, guess what?
But if that's the case, why is there agitation with how they vote, these politically ignorant people?
They're not voting. There is no, listen, there is no engagement. They only won't benefit from non-engagement. You're acting as if 90 or 100% of the people showed up all the time and they got nothing. That is not what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, less than like 30% of people showed up during the election in Mississippi. I think it was probably even less in actual Louisiana.
17% in Louisiana.
Or Sandog, to give you an example too, when you had the contentious election in 2020, like Joe Biden, Trump, all the marbles, hey, large implications. Correct me if I'm wrong, someone on the panel. I believe the turnout was around roughly like 60% of the electorate, 65%.
Yes.
And that was considered like a high that they had not seen in decades. I mean, I think you had to go back to like 1900s to see something, even the equivalent. So it is a black male problem. And like most problems, it is an American problem. And like most problems that are American problems, they become exacerbated with marginalized groups. And I hope that gives you a sort of an idea of when we talk about lack of engagement, of if you're getting that at the, at the overall level, when you drill down specifically to a population like black men, it's even worse engagement on big, even in a big election cycle like the one.
Well, that's what I opened up with. But this is what I'm trying to say. Everything that you're saying, I opened up with this, right? that the fact that, again, engagement, knowledge of the process. So again, when I was out there,
that's personal responsibility, man. That's personal responsibility to do that.
Door to door and all these things, it was like pulling teeth, right? So again, because a lot of you haven't heard my origin story, right? So when I was a young man on my college campus, I was class president. My school is split in half. There's a girls' side, there's a boys' side. Our university, like some schools, had facilities management issues. So I speak with the interim president, I speak with the head of physical facilities, and I draft the plan. And what do? I go to the male side of the school first. I don't include the women because the idea is, that we as men should be leaders in our community, right? And ultimately, what ended up happening was my plan went to dust because as soon as the AKAs came out with some turntables and free food, no one was interested in that work anymore.
Okay, well, right? I have another question about this specific plan. What year did this happen, and what party were you actually trying to? Have you always been a conservative, kind of all the time, or?
No, it wasn't a party. This was just me as class president reaching out to my male classmates. There was no party.
All right, so I have a question. Involved.
Yes.
I'm getting confused because I don't understand how is this material to the left-right conversation we're trying to have right now.
Because we're talking. Here's the thing. You're missing it, right? A lot of what you explained to me, or what you thought you explained to me, I mentioned it in my opening monologue about how there are people. So maybe I didn't articulate it in a certain way in regards to engagement, in regards to lack of involvement, right?
That's a personal problem, though. Like
yes. So this again,
here's the thing. Here's the
at the
thing.
end of the day,
I am not
get
trying to
that,
bring these people
but
in here. At the end of the day,
but that's fine, right? But at the end of the day, all I'm trying to say is that things have to evolve. You cannot determine
evolve
how
into
Black
what?
evolve to whatever
what?
the hell they're looking for, right? To evolve.
No,
So
no,
look,
no, no.
Listen, right? So for example, right? When Black people first started voting, they were in the Republican Party for whatever their reasons were, right?
No. Wait. Those reasons were specific. You can't just yada yada that. People had no voice, and then they got a chance to voice, and they voted against the people that they're being abused by. Like, you can't yada yada that.
Come on, man. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. The first time you and I met, you didn't know me from a can of paint, and you cursed me out like I was. You didn't even know me, right? Look. If we're gonna have a kind of quote unquote,
let's just keep it. Let's keep it simple, Sandal. Let's keep it simple because we're pressed for time, and I want to make sure Dr. Phoenix and Jay Shine get in before time.
Yeah. So all of these things is what I said. So at the end of the day, look, whether you care about these people or not, they are looking for some scale of self-determinism. I can't even tell you how it's going to turn out. That's what they're looking for. Right. Again, that's
okay. Why are they looking for it at 30 and 40 years old? Why are they continuously looking for it? This is a personal responsibility issue that politics is not going to solve. You're trying to hide behind these people and trying to bring them in and sabotage this actual system.
On my side of the house, then personal responsibility. Look, when you're if you're talking about a from what I hear, what you guys saw, you're talking about demographics of people coming from broken homes, people who can't read. That's why I said early in this conversation with Mike V, when we talked about the victories of the Biden administration, which I admitted to, and I said we would have to separate Black people into their demographics to understand how this group of people sees it as a victory and these people do not. Right?
But isn't that a leftist argument though? In the sense
sure is.
Well, no, in the sense of, hey, that these people are disengaged and that the system is going to have to do something to engage them. Do you think that? Don't you think that's kind of the leftist argument in the sense of like that tends to be more Democrats?
But that's what I'm trying to say. I'm left leaning. I am a Republican that is left leaning. This is what I'm look. This is
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, Sandog. That you don't know how that was my whole point of why I have these discussions with people, because that is not admitted. You got to understand that right there is not admitted. Now, I don't go as far as saying that I don't care, like my brother MOT does. I don't lean that far to the Ragnarok part of it, destroy everything. But the sentiment that I think that he's trying to say is that for those that's in the know, like you, like MOT, like us, just on this panel, it would do us good if we don't try to kind of like stand on falsified talking points, right? Like we can admit the negative sides of both parties, but there is a time to kind of like move forward and say, okay, what is it that Black men want? And the things that Black men want, because it's under the guise of being Black. Like I said, the whole word Black altogether means liberal in this country. It means liberal in this country. That's going to automatically put you on the left, even if you have a care. I care what happened to Black men. Let me just speak for DC. I care. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. I care for what happened to those that don't have the same opportunities that I ended up having. I care. We don't all have to agree about what point of caring that we have. But as far as being accurate on the politics and the history, we can start there and not have a disingenuous conversation. See what you admitting that you leaned that way, that goes a long way. See, now we can move forward. We don't have to waste time with some of this stuff. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
I've been said this. Right? remember, DC, remember what you said. Sandor, I could actually talk to you. Right? This is what I'm saying. And you and I talked one-on-one. We talked about the fallacies of the right, and we talked about the fallacies. We talked about the fallacies of the left, right? And my biggest argument is that it does Black people a disservice only to be on one side. To your point, if nothing more for information, that's it. And that's my stance. That is ultimately my stance in it all. And as for the other Black men, right, who are looking at politics, who are going out there and making their decisions, is at the end of the day, I don't know what the outcomes are, right? So when the civil rights movement begins in 1954, nobody knew what the outcome would be. When the Civil War started, nobody knew what the outcome would be. So, this is Sandog's point. So for these guys beginning to mobilize or come to this side of the house or to this side of the fence, despite what may exist, right? Because there's a lot of American politics now that's confusing to me, right? You know what I'm saying? In terms of, people's stances, which kind of flip-flops, right? But at the end of the day, these guys coming into that Republican space and starting to engage it, because at the end of the day, confrontation and conflict is not a bad thing. Just like you said, what happens when 100 Kevin Samuels show up? So when that happens, there's now a voice, you know what I'm saying, inside, like I said, inside of that party. So I come from the school of thought of a Thaddeus Stevens, right? That's what influenced me, right? New York City, PS 81, Thaddeus Stevens Elementary School. And what was Thaddeus Stevens? He was a radical Republican that wanted to eradicate all vestiges of the Confederacy. What am I trying to say? He wanted no parts of it. I can't find a word, versus the other factions of the Republican Party that played footsie.
He had revolutionary politics, but that's a totally different thing. Listen, if you're talking about the Republicans post Reconstruction, you know that you're talking about Republican Party that is basically the party that liberated slavery, right? The most radical party. That is like a far in today's term, it's like putting a Green Party with all kind of black fist up. Like that's what that party represented. They were the people that wanted to radically change this country. They were the progressives. And during that time period, they were not what they are now. They are not what they are now.
I get you. So Sandor exists from the idea that these people need to exist, right? These people need to exist within the party, right? Within the party in order to actually start having a discussion. Just like what you said. So the fact that when you and I talked, right, we were now able to have discussions. And that's what I'm saying. These people need to exist. So all I'm saying is that, to your point, once they come over and they see what it is, because inherently, anywhere you go, you're not going to agree with everything that you see. You're not going to agree with everything that you see inherently when you go into a space, right? There's always going to be some form of confrontation or conflict. So for me, confrontation or conflict, these are things that I don't necessarily shy away from, right? So all I'm saying is that if you were to have 100 Kevin Samuels and 100, like I said, and 100 Sand Dogs, you might get enough influence within that party where there's more levels of parity, or now you could really start to have certain real discussions on problems. Remember what I said, right? On top of the stuff that I said, one of the big issues in American politics is expediency, right? Where people think, like MOT, shit should happen overnight and you should just give me things. And that's how politics works. And it doesn't work that way. And because you have people in society who exist that way, and you have and you have people that may be willing to cater to it, you end up kicking the can down the road and not having the ability to solve certain problems.
Okay, so that is a mischaracterization of my point.
I don't think that's what he meant, Sam.
Your idea is showing up with dudes with 100
Yeah,
suits and like Kevin Samuels, so that's your point. That's not my point. My point is participation over time, like everybody else in the system, to get results. Not waiting on the political system, somebody to provide and do all the work for you. You got to do all this stuff yourself.
Yeah, that's
the only way that it works.
I agree with you. That's what I'm saying. And I said, I agree. And agree, it's not a magic lamp that you rub. This is agreed.
Let's go to.
I think Mike's going to go to Dr. Phoenix.
Yeah, let's go to Dr. Phoenix and Jay Sean.
Dr. Phoenix.
I'm
sorry.
You here first.
I think the roar. I think there's some feedback.
The feedback from me, or
yeah, I think that's coming from Dr. Phoenix.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The sound system in your Mustang Dark Horse is so good. It's giving us some feedback.
I'll go until he gets there.
Go ahead, Jay Sean.
Well, first of all, I want to say thanks for having me on the panel, and great discussion. I was actually sitting back enjoying this back and forth from what I consider some of the strongest brothers in this space. But that's just my opinion. I just want to touch on something before I make my comment about something MOT said, and I want to add to it. You know, to Sandog, I just want to say this, get this on the record. It's not just the fact that these dudes lack any real serious positions. The guys I call the conservatives that came into this space, they antagonized other brothers in this space. Let's not throw that away. No one went to SKCs or Bitch Boy Nates or, you know, Hood Servers. Nobody went to their channels to antagonize them. No one was trolling in their chat rooms. They did that to other brothers. All right, which shows the lack of seriousness that's on their side. That's why I'm 100,000% behind what MOT just said. I don't want to have a conversation with them no more, because to have a conversation with them is to legitimize their positions, and they don't have any. That's like having an argument with a 5-year-old about cleaning their room and really having a back and forth about it. There's no back and forth. But that's what we're doing when we do that. So I hope you guys stick to those guns, because I don't want to have a conversation with them. Because, so now I'm gonna get to my comment, and I've said this many times before. To Sandog, to any other brother out here who calls themselves a conservative, there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing I would say is this: if you call yourself a Black conservative, then it must be in alignment with all conservatism or other conservatives on the planet, or it doesn't mean conservative. What I'm saying is that no matter what country I step in, whether it's a European country, the Middle Eastern country, you know, I've been all over Europe. I've been Tunisia, I've been Egypt, Qatar, Bahrain, and I'll be in Dubai this week, right? And I'll get with you later, Sandog. I know what you're about to say.
Yeah, can't wait to see you. Yeah,
I got to email you. That's my fault. I just remember that. Yeah. Just this moment. But anyway, no matter what country you step in, when you're dealing with a conservative male in that country, they're pro themselves. So if you call yourself a Black conservative, I should see somebody who's pro-Black. But we don't see that, do we? We see most of the brothers who call themselves Black conservatives in this space, not all, not you, Sandog, others. I'm talking about, you know, most of the majority. They call us pro-wax or progressives, you know, or liberal, whatever they want to call us. But they don't see themselves as pro-Blacks. If anything, they're antagonistic towards other Black men and the Black community as a whole, which is not conservatism. Any man that you see in the world that calls himself conservative, their politics has at least a tinge, at least a dash of xenophobia in it. That's across the world. It's only this American Negro that calls themselves a conservative that acts the way they do. That's why I cannot legitimize them no more. I don't want to have a discussion with them no more. There's no discussion to be had. That discussion is being had with them. I will not be around. And I'm asking other brothers to stop legitimizing them. They are not legitimate. And Mike V knows this to be true. Every time we hop on panels with them and then do debate them, we see that they don't know nothing.
Agreed.
They don't know shit. You know, they act like there's no history to anything. It's all an emotionalism. It's about how they feel about the Black community or themselves, and how they feel about the white community, this persuasion they have for them. And it's ridiculous, and it's embarrassing because it's happening on a public platform. That's another tilt that I'm not going to get into right now. So that's really what I have to add to that, because DC and this back and forth between you and Sandog, I think is actually healthy. I want to get us back. I hope the Black manosphere gets back to the point where me and people like myself and MOT can get back to debating. Where you have two progressive Black men who can debate about different things about going forward, because me and him don't disagree on the problem. We just disagree on remedies. And that's really the conversation that should be taking place. Trying to re-educate and trying to entertain people in the space, having these fool fights, it's not healthy. It's not getting us nowhere, and time is running out. Time is running out. The Black man specifically, because I can bring in Black women too, the Black community as a whole, but the Black man specifically, if you don't know this, and this is what 2 cents I'm gonna add to this conversation. If you do not know this, you are positioned perfectly to make a lot of noise. And you have been for the last at least 3 political cycles. We don't have a political play in the Republican Party. Let's take emotions out of it. You don't have the numbers over there. Your people are over here. So let me give you a quick example. We had the MAGA movement before they had the Tea Party. They constantly, these movements have been pulling the Republican Party further and further to the right, further into a white nationalist standpoint. That's either true or not true. I think everybody here agrees on that position. The question I have for y'all is, how did they do it? Did they run to the Democratic Party to do it? No, they did not. They did it within the Republican Party. It's no different than when the neocons were pulling the party into war and all kinds. They did it within the Republican Party. If you have the numbers to flip Georgia, North Carolina, make noise in Texas in certain Congress races, same thing in congressional races all through the Black caucus. If you have the ability throughout many states in the country, you have the ability to do that as just as Black men, then you have a political play. So if you wanted to be a conservative, if you had conservative tilt, to be a Democratic conservative, because your numbers are over there. So commandeer your votes the same way the religious right does, the same way the MAGA crowd does, the same way the Tea Party did. That's where your numbers are. And then if you want to flip parties and later on, then you have a voting base that you can rock with. That's how we got into the Democratic Party in the first place. That just happened. We used to be Republicans 60, 70 years ago. So this is not something that cannot be done. But it's all about getting what you need for your people. That flip from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party had to do with tangibles. It was about getting the vote. It was about ending segregation. It was about fair housing. It was about fair jobs. There was a lot of things that came out of the civil rights movement. You cannot dispute that. That's how we ended up over there. So why did we leave the Republican Party? Sure, they were the ones that helped get us out of slavery, but for all those lynchings and all that shit that happened to us for the Jim Crow happened under the Republicans. So we have no friends. We have to organize our people and organize our vote. That's what the Black man is not doing. That's what DC was talking about. We're not even participating.
You flip Texas alone, you will send shockwaves through the political
throughout the system, and they'll come knocking at your door.
Texas was blue in the 90s under Clinton.
Exactly. And what was the number? You always like to correct me, Mike V. What was the exact number of votes that Trump said he wanted in Georgia?
11,780.
Yeah, I always round up to 12,000, but he always like to correct me. But you telling me that 12,000 Black men could not change Georgia? We can't make that happen. We can't mobilize 30,000 Black men in Georgia.
30,000 Black
failure
men.
Of the Black.
30,000 Black men did not show up to vote.
Exactly. So I'm talking about the ones that did vote, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But yeah, you're right. What about the ones who didn't?
People already pretty much considered Georgia. You come out with our full voting strength, this is a blue state. A lot of people know that it's a purple state, really, literally, but that could easily become a blue state. We know.
So, let me say this real quick, Ngone. If 30,000 Black men showed up and voted for Mike V, you didn't even have to vote for either party. You say, fine, I don't want to vote Republican or Democrat. We just made that statement. That shuts Black women down. You know what's crazy about this space? Let me just say this. A lot of brothers in this space, y'all like to argue with Black women. Yeah, do. There's some platforms in here that love to put a black woman in the chair and go at her and have a go at her. You know what I mean? You know what would be more fun is run up in the Democratic Party and turn over tables. And where's she going to go? You have a play. This is not about emotions. This is not about liking one party or other. I'm just looking at the math. And all I care about is getting what we need as black men, making sure that we have programs and jobs for us, because they got a bunch of programs for them and a bunch of people that don't belong in the country. And we need to be vocal about that. We need to be present about that, or we're not even being men. I'm supposed to care, and I gotta care about my grandchildren. I have no choice. That's in my DNA. I gotta care about the power of my grandchildren, or the lack of. And that's what we're running into right now. We're running into a situation where we have zero power as a group, and as black men, we have even less than zero. And I'll leave it there.
Well, I think you bring up really excellent points. You're hitting it right on the head. The key thing why the Voting Rights Act is being gutted, and they're trying to turn back the clock with respect to that, so they can discriminate your vote and so forth, is because of the power of our vote. It's because of what they've seen. A lot of this tremendous kickback you're seeing now, or counter reaction, was because of the Obama presidency. And what that portends for the future. So they're trying to literally move strictly on a power base, so they can reduce your power. So yeah, your voting power has been seen, and it's they're definitely trying to curtail that because of that. When we talk about the conservatives, especially here in the space, I call them, where's Citizen Lou? I don't see him here today, but I got to call him out here, shout him out if you will. When he came, I think he came up with the term Keisha conservatives. That's essentially what you're really dealing with. Keisha conservatives in the space. Keisha conservatives. I just want to, get that term out, get that term out there. Citizen Law, I think, came up with that, and very accurate as to what's really going on, because we're really looking at real issues for that of black men. We're not really speaking about that, and we're not dealing with that on the ground the way we need to at a level from participating in this process. So we need to certainly step up stronger on that. But Jay Shine, really great point you really put up there. I just wanted to just kind of piggyback on that a little bit. I'm done.
Can I say one thing real quick? I'm sorry, one more thing real quick. Thank you, Nagone. And Nagone, you my hero. You know why. I just want to point this out. I swear to God, I'm not going to do this ever again. But in the chat room, I'm not going to say his name. When I'm talking about what happened when we were Republicans, he immediately went to by who it was by. It was by whites. I don't care what party it were. The point I was making, and this is what I'm talking about, the lack of sincerity and seriousness from these guys, is the point is if we were Republicans. So why didn't Republicans protect us? You see what I'm saying? This is the lack of seriousness that comes from these people. That's why it's not even worth having a conversation with them. I just had to point that out because it's happened in real time. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the idiocy and nonsense that these guys sit for hours, and they've been doing this for years. Think about the time they wasted with their own personal lives just trolling. These are not even adults as far as I'm concerned. We got serious stuff going on. Everybody just saw the viral video of the brother squaring up with the white guy and the black guy squaring up in some city. I forgot the name of this. I forgot what city it was, but they were squaring up. Huh?
Montgomery? Yeah,
with Montgomery and the guy. No, not Montgomery situation. I'm talking about. I actually have it on my screen. I can share it with you. It's from the camera of the police were on a bicycle, and when the video starts, you can see the police coming to a situation where you have a black man and a white man squaring up with each other, about to have a fight. The police show up, they stop fighting, they go separate ways. All the police did was go after the black guy. This is not 1923, 1953, 1963. This is 2023. That is what it is. That's the reality of life. That's the reality of things. And this is what these dudes want to play with. I can't play with that. As I'm going about my life and act like that the economy doesn't exist, that situation is not a real one. And they jumped on the brother too. I'll leave the link in the back so you guys can watch it. But this is exactly the lack of seriousness that so-called Black men are not taking with their own lives. That could be you about to get into a fight, a fair one. They were shooting a fair one. No one was jumping that white guy. But when they came through, there wasn't even a tussle. There wasn't even violence yet. But they jumped on the Black person. And they let that white man go about his business. Like this is 1961. So if that situation is what it is, and you want to ignore that for what? What are you getting out of it? See, a lot of these dudes, man, let me just say this last thing. A lot of these dudes ain't coming outside the house anyway. Let's keep that in mind. See, Sandog, you in the world like me. Brothers like me, we in the world. We see things a little differently from being outside the country right now, but we're still men in the world. We can't play with our lives like that. But these guys that sit online, these guys who don't have businesses, these guys who don't have any skin in the game, these guys who ain't paying for nothing, they ain't investing in nothing. They can sit online and troll all goddamn day and then not to be taken seriously.
I agree with that 100%. And not just people who are vested with just businesses. I go even further. Just hey, people who got kids, or even if you don't, people who have grandparents who lived through this, like my grandparents, they can talk, they were involved in civil rights. So they can tell you about, death threats and things they received, because the county they lived in was 80% Black, but people didn't have the right to vote. So all of that is, even what you're saying, Jay Sean, I even go to just the sacrifice that people made before you is just not something to be played with or joked around or kidded with. Like, to your point, you have to be serious and sincere when you come and make these arguments versus just trying to troll someone, especially behind what's at stake and what people are trying to do as we speak.
Let's go to Dr. Phoenix.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with what was just said by Jay Shine, Renaissance Man, and Man of Tomorrow. There were just a few points I wanted to highlight earlier what Sandog said. So if you're saying that less than 30% of Black men don't have college degrees and student loans is not really an issue for them, would it be fair to say is also the reason why so many Black men have not been able to find a footing in the professional world, just in society in general? I mean, it's open-ended question.
Yeah. It's a question, or is it rhetorical?
It's not rhetorical. It's a question.
No, I agree. There's a correlation. Yes.
So you said you were an Army officer, right?
Yes.
What does it take to become an Army officer? Because I'm a former Army medic. So what does it take to become an Army officer?
You need a degree.
Okay. So you need to have a degree. So you're saying that what you do now isn't a direct reflection of the fact that, one, you're college educated, two, you were in the military as an officer, correct?
Yes.
So your lifestyle right now is a direct reflection of what you've done before up until that point, right?
Correct.
Okay. So how can you also complain about agents in higher ed and pushing for affirmative action when, one, they technically were a Trojan horse? The actual the lawsuit that went before the Supreme Court was pushed by Ed Blum, who's a conservative.
Yes.
And also he was funded by other conservative groups and think tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been trying to do this for probably the better half of the last 2-3 decades. Going all the way back to the very first case, he represented a young lady named Abigail, I can't remember her last name, but it was for the University of Texas. He was the one behind that. In fact, the young lady he represented was the daughter of a friend of his. Mm-hmm. So to sit here on one hand and say that education is not really needed,
I didn't say that. I never said that. You're putting words in my mouth.
But you're implying that black men don't have a role in being educated, that being educated doesn't have a role in black men's outcomes in this society. That's what you're implying. That's what you're implying earlier.
No, what I clearly stated was, and there's a replay, right? Remember, we're not a monolith, right? So amongst black men, we're not a monolith, right? So what happens is when black men have different ideas or different opinions, amongst Black America, kind of like what's happening now, right? You're being brought up. I'm basically being brought to trial, damn near, as if I killed Jesus. Look, the thing is,
I'll bring you to
no,
trial,
no,
but I
wait,
am saying there's a contradiction in what you're saying versus what your reality is. Look, I'm just gonna make this really clear. People on this panel already know me. I've been coming on this panel now for
yes,
about
and they
almost
know
what,
me
two
as
and a half,
well.
3 years almost now.
Yes,
And anyone knows me knows I've been in health. I'm in healthcare. Been in for a long time in medical school, and at the same time, I deal with outcomes. So the stuff that I see with Black males, with young Black males, older Black males in between middle age, is generally the same thing, which is that for the most part, the vast majority of men, Black men that I'm running into in the healthcare sector, most of them typically are either undereducated.
Mm-hmm.
They when it comes to just maintaining and holding the job or employment in general, it tends to be a transient process for them.
Yes.
On top of the fact that for you to sit here and acknowledge, say, well, it doesn't really matter because most black men aren't going to college, but then I'm sitting up here benefiting from the fact that I went to college and I'm military. And I can sit here and say the same thing. I've been all over the world, lived in a number of countries in the world, but at the same time, I would never come before a group of Black men and tell them that, yes, I was in the military, I was deployed to Iraq, but because I also went to college, none of that had no bearing on what my situation is today.
That will agree and say that's what I was saying.
That would be completely disingenuous of me to do or say something or even imply that. Because you've been implying a lot of things in this entire conversation.
I'm going to look. Then what we can do is we can have a part 2 to this, right?
Because there needs to be a part 2 because I think this is brother, you've been talking the entire time. I've been patiently waiting here.
Words in my mouth.
I don't think there needs to be a part 2 because these are conversations I've had not only with gentlemen like yourself, but there's been this general stream of Black men who consistently comes on panels and takes shots at Black men who gone to school. But then they themselves are also educated. But who are you pandering to? Because the problem is if you have wayward Black males, wayward Black boys,
get your emotions out.
Black boys without a purpose and without focus, that is a socio-cultural issue. That is not a political issue.
Get it out.
That is something that starts in their internal environment.
Get it out.
Politics is an external force that is exerting its influence on their internal environment. So if they weren't already fortified with the things that they need to be successful in this America in the 21st century, where you have a society that is consistently being even more driven on science and math and your ability to quantify things in a mathematical way. And we got most Black, you go look at the education statistics for Black males in high school in any major city, you'd be lucky if you can get 50 to 60% of them to graduate with a high school diploma. And that's who's running, and that's who's coming out here into the field. And they're listening to folks like you and a lot of other folks in your same lane who sit here and tell them that these things are not important. What's important is that, you need to divest from these progressive issues. Let's be clear about something. The reason Black folks have what they have in this world today is because of progressives. And more importantly, if you look at the civil rights movement, for example, the folks who were the main champions of it were also educated folks. The folks who gave Black people a lot of the ideology, the underpinnings of it. These were educated Black folks. So education has always had a place in Black America. The problem is that in Black America today, we don't believe in nothing that doesn't give us instant gratification. And the simple fact is, if you want to deal with the issue of Black boys, you need to start dealing with the issue of the internal environment. Because I've lost count of the numbers of homeless Black men I run into in Georgia, in Atlanta in particular. And I'm in a city now where the the folks that have been coming to Georgia are all educated, highly educated. And they are completely displacing all of these non-educated Black folks. Now, educated Black folks in Georgia, they typically are not going to have much of an issue. But they are a small percentage compared out of the group, out of the entire population. So you're looking at a situation now in places like Atlanta, DC is another place where you're Chicago, my home city, New York. You're seeing numbers of folks who are educated come into those cities, and they've completely displaced all the folks that essentially aren't. And education, no, it doesn't mean you have to go get a 4-year degree per se. But even if you look at the numbers of Black men in trade, they're marginal at best. It's not even enough to make a difference in most cases. I'll leave it at that.
I'm going to say this, right? What I'm going to say is this, right? Again, even when I came into this space and I announced where I stood, and again, one example I told you, I got cursed out before a word can even come out of my mouth, right? So you're talking about somebody who is in this particular side of the politics, right? I don't come here. I don't fight people. I'm not anti-Black male, and me being against Black people and education, that is not even remotely what I said, right? First of all, when I walked in, the first thing that I addressed were the accomplishments of the Biden administration, the disconnect in communication, Black male engagement. I openly talked about, like I said, I openly talked about these things. And what I said was, because I care about Black men. And if these guys' politics are shaped around their home lives and what they experienced, so be it. And they're going to go through the political process or whatever process in life, and they're going to evolve, and they're going to come out to their own conclusions. So somebody who might agree with me today, 3 years down the world, may vehemently disagree with me. And that's fine, right? That's fine. There's an issue. So for example, this whole thing. So if I was some white guy from CNBC right now, the argument would be, well, we're not all a monolith. And then I'm here, you'll say, I'm here and I'm being walked the truck. Like Pontius Pilate might as well be standing next to me, right? And I'm here and it's like damn near being walked to trial instead of an exchange of ideas. I will never be against Black men in education. I am from the projects of Brooklyn, New York, right? I'm from the projects of Brooklyn, New York. And what happens is if we're going to have a real discussion in terms of how people think and what makes them function, Mike, I'm asking for another show, right? Because I didn't know what time we were going to do this show. And the conversation is going to be more structured. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to give in strategic management what's called a pestle analysis, right? So, so at the end of the day, for those not going to know, that's the political, environmental, social, technological, and legal and economic, right? So before, in the military, it's a situation paragraph, but a pestle analysis is something that you look at to gauge whether you're going to enter a market or not, right? So we'll do a pestle analysis because you're asking what do Black men want and what's motivating these situations. So at the end of the day, you cannot in the same breath care about racism, but then be upset at the fact that it fucking destroys homes. You can't you can't separate the two. So at the end of the day, right? And like I said, that's why I brought up integration, because at the end of the day, if you're engaging the system, you're gonna have to pick the kind of poison that you can stand and that you can manage. It's really a damned if you do, and in some ways, damned if you don't. And so if these guys are having different ideas on how to go about something or how to do something, so be it. And let's see where it goes.
Wait, Sandog. I'm just well, two things.
Hold on.
Okay, go
No,
ahead.
man. No, I'm gonna. You guys can have fun because this shit that he said. I'm serious. I gotta go because I'm not like that. I've been on hundreds of panels, and I've never done that to say that I don't care. Black men in education and this, I said that we are not a monolith. So based upon where a black man falls socioeconomically, he may see things differently. If you guys want to have a Kennedy School of Government level of conversation with me, might make a part 2, and then we can do that. But you're talking about the disposition. You're talking about the disposition of these men, right? Because again, I come from the projects, right? So I'm a military officer. So guess what? One of my fraternity brothers, I want to say this. One of my fraternity brothers said, hey, I was a West Point minority recruiter. And I'm like, wait a minute. When I was in school in New York City, the only recruiters that ever came to me were people to enlist. What do you mean West Point has minority?
Like we back here again talking about tanks in the fucking military. The conversation is beyond that shit. We're talking about what you're going to be able to do on the right. We are progressives. We know what we can do and what we can get done on the left. But in order for us to keep having a conversation with you, you have to be up to date about what's going on within this environment. So that way we're not going back into your past. Okay? You never heard me talk about things in the military.
Here's the thing.
Like, what is going on here? It's like every time you get locked out of something, we go back to tanks and shit all over again.
MOT, let him finish his statement, and then we'll go to Dr. Phoenix.
Right, I'm going to get off the panel, right? And what I'm going to do, you could go ahead, have fun, talk your shit about me. What I'm going to do, Mike, come back to me, Mike. And now, in terms of what could be done on the right, because I'm pissed off. So what could be done on the right, I'll lay it out to you. What could be done on the right, take it or fucking leave it, right? For all I care.
That's a discussion I want.
I am just, like I said, this stuff here, I'm just agitated because, again, at the end of the day, the conversation as I understood it was about the disposition of Black men, what they want, and why are they making their decisions.
Sandog, just Sandog, hold on for a second, Sandog, please, just hold on, brother. This is DC. Now, listen, before we even got hot and heavy into the dialogue, that's why I said that with the ideas that's going to be exchanged between us when we have, ideas that are kind of like, opposed to each other, it's going to elicit, some emotion. And Dr. Phoenix, I think, was not talking specifically about you per se, just the
standpoint. To nothing specifically that about him specifically.
Right. It's just the standpoint.
I spoke to his each and every specific point that I had an issue with him. I do believe that as a whole, it is wholly disingenuous to come up on a panel and talk about some education initiatives like student loan forgiveness and stuff. It's not important because you only have about a quarter of Black men with college degrees, but you're talking as a Black man who's college educated and a military officer. And you know exactly what it took to get to that point.
But I'm talking about
that is a wholly disingenuous point. I didn't, and secondly, stop making it seem like I went after you personally. I didn't say nothing personal about you. Everything I said was just general and straight to in addressing the points that you made that I had an issue with. So this is why I don't come on panels, because the fundamental issue is that for so many Black men, especially for a lot of these dudes, I'm just gonna keep it honest with you. You sound like one of these FBA pro-Black types, okay? I'm not necessarily against Black folks in some of the stuff that they believe in, but the fundamental issue I have is that you can't sit here and make asinine statements like that. You did make a statement about Asians getting in education and pushing for the end of affirmative action, but Asians were the Trojan horse.
Well, Dr. Phoenix, he did talk, just so you know, he's
by a right wing group and it was led by Ed Blum, who is himself a conservative. He's also a member of another group.
Yeah,
Did you
dropped
address any
Dr.
of these
Phoenix.
people,
Has had a
Sandog,
long history
about that?
of going after
he
he
left the
dropped.
panel.
of
He left
having
the panel.
initiatives and policies that directly impact Black people. He's had a long history going back at least 2 to 3 decades. So
Yeah,
for you to make a statement like that,
no, I was just going to say, Dr. Phoenix, he has
you're
left
just
the panel.
oblivious to the. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, Dr. Phoenix, he had left the panel, so he won't even be able to respond.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. But I'm just gonna be honest here. I've listened to enough panels over the last couple years to understand that a lot of guys, they come on here, they come on panels, and they do this gaslighting crap. Where you want to sit here and say, oh, well, these political issues don't affect Black folks because you only have this small percentage of Black folks that are affected by it, but it doesn't affect us as a collective. But then to sit here and acknowledge right after that and say, oh, well, the Asians were fighting to end affirmative action, but then you don't even know the full story behind it.
I mean, the right-wingers have been trying to end affirmative action for a while. They just use the Asians to get rid of it. Yes. That's his side of the aisle. What was the Supreme Court voting? Why is he not addressing that? Why would you even bring it up if you're on that side? Why would you bring it up when it's your people who did that? Those were not liberals who did that. This is what I mean. It's like, dude, listen, I don't want to hear shit about tanks. I don't want to hear shit about you being in the military. Most of the people on this panel been in the military. We don't dart off to that type of shit in order to make a point. They do this shit in front of civilians all the time, and they make civilians shut the fuck up with it. I don't want to hear that shit. I want to hear what you're doing on your side about your issues. Stop trying to hide behind these politically fucking ignorant fucking men who don't want to learn about the system, who have all these self-esteem based issues that they think a political system is supposed to address. That's not what politics are for. The only reason why they're on the right is because they get to buck dance, troll, and not care about the process and not show up to vote. They can't even explain why they're over there.
Let me just say, because I think some people may not understand. Sandog and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, back before Thanksgiving, about this very subject, and I thought it would be great to have him come on and, his opening monologue kind of set the tone for where we are right now. We didn't really have a real structured docket to go off of, but I wanted him to actually express how he saw, the past, present, and future of Black male politics, and I think he was able to get that off. But to the point that I think that MOT and a couple others want to actually flesh out is what's the strategy on the right to actually get some things moving progressively, because he admitted on the panel that he is a Republican who is left-leaning. Now, I think when you're left-leaning on the right, you kind of isolate yourself, because I don't know if Byron Donalds is really going to express, that student loan debt should be canceled. I don't think that Tim Scott is going to come out and say that the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is something he advocates for. I think that a lot of the times when Black men take that side, they end up isolating themselves, and it then becomes ineffective.
Well, Mike, I think that kind of reflects, he said he hasn't been in the country in about 20 years. So, roughly he's around the 2000s. So, if you're someone who has not followed the body politic, in the 90s, you did have, quote, some liberal Republicans still around. I believe someone like an Edmund Burke would have been one of them, who, could have tried to play that, maybe even a Jack Kemp. He may not have been liberal, but he was another person that sort of came up as a name of people. Dick Lugar, people who sort of came up as a name of, I'm a Republican, but, I basically have a message for, people who are not in the dominant society or underrepresented or come from a marginalized background. Like, hey, I have a plan tailored to you.
Edward Burke or Edward Brooks?
It was Edmund Burke, wasn't it? The one from Massachusetts.
Edward Brooks. Senator Brooks.
Okay.
Oh, Senator Brooks. Edmund Burke is one of the archetypes of modern conservatism. That's
Oh,
those,
okay,
those are
okay.
two different people. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, my bad, my bad. No, yeah, I was referring to the senator from Massachusetts. But yeah, so I think part of that just may be where his politics is, and with him not being here, and I was going to try to say this to him earlier, like you know, DC sort of hit on it too. The political spectrum has changed since Obama. It's just it's day and night. I mean, you've seen the exodus of John McCain passed on, the Jeff Flakes of the world, the John Boehners, Paul Ryans, people who were not so ideologically rigid, have sort of left the party. People who were more of liberal, Colin Powell has passed on, but was distancing himself from the party. And I don't know if he's been following all that to really understand that when you say you're a liberal Republican, it's pretty much non-existent today, and just really what the political spectrum, what it really looks like in 2023 going into 2024. And maybe that's sort of where this disconnect with him comes from as well.
I think there are some Black men in particular, or Black people, who can't see themselves being a part of the Democratic Party or voting Democrat, but utilize the shelter, or what's left of shelter, for the Republican Party to take a stance. And I think that it seems like it's an ineffective position, but that's the way how they see it, that they would much rather be on the Republican side and fight their left-leaning progressive ideas from there, rather than to stomach the Democratic Party. I mean, it's not my position, but it seems like that may be the position that some folks do take. I have heard even somebody like Shirley Hussar, who been on a Republican ticket, advocate for reparations and all these other things, for American descendants of slaves, or FBAs, whatever you want to call them. And so there are Black people who do think like this. Rest in peace to Shirley.
Yes.
Something like, I want to make something really clear. I think the fundamental problem I have with folks like him, because I met a lot of military, I know a lot of military officers, and met plenty of military Black men who are military officers like him in my life. And I'll be frank, I'm just gonna be really frank here. When you become a military officer, especially in the Army, for example, you're pretty much trying to you're going to eventually try to attempt to ingratiate yourself with the good old boys, because that's essentially the very definition of the good old boys network. And again, there's not a lot of Black military officers that I've come across, at least when I was on active duty, that you didn't have to overlook some stuff just to get to where you're at.
Yeah.
You have to inherently overlook some things to get to where you're at, because he mentioned earlier about Black men, about the numbers that are lacking in Black men in the officer ranks in the military. Yeah, it's only like 10%, if even that. And think about that. So if you know that the vast majority of the time that the military recruiters are approaching young Black males, is to do what? To enlist. Are they approaching them about being a West Point cadet?
I think the last
No,
numbers, Dr. Phoenix, was that the Air Force has some of the highest Black male officers, ranking of Black male officers out of all branches.
I know, because
Always have had.
Yeah, because one of the guys that wrote, one of my mentors that wrote a letter of recommendation for me to go to medical school, was an officer in the U.S. Air Force. He was a major. He was a pilot, and he was also a medical doctor. And I met him like my junior year in undergrad. So yeah. So no, you're right in that regard. But my problem is that, yeah, you're gonna have to, there's certain things you have to do to ingratiate yourself to that network. And anyone that's been in the military knows damn well it's a good old boys network. And if you're a Black man, you're typically gonna be on the outside looking in. So you're trying to squeeze your way in. And so there are gonna be some things you're gonna have to overlook to get into that group. Now, again, there are benefits for being in military service, but I think it's just wholly disingenuous to come on a panel and talk about none of these educational initiatives are not really important to Black folks, when one, the vast majority of black males aren't even getting out of high school. And the ones that are wholly unprepared for the world that they're walking into. I'm running into goddamn third graders that can tell me more about the basic makeup of a cell than college freshmen. I don't think black people have a true understanding of the level of competition, just how much and just how far black folks and black males in particular are behind on the academic spectrum.
Well, and that's
It's
a
real silent.
that's a
It's real silent.
position. Yeah, that's a position that I think that politically black men can fight from, or fight from, in terms of the school board, your PTAs and everything else that is involved in that ecosystem of cultivating a more safer space and better space to be advantageous to black males in the K through 12 sector. I don't see a whole lot of folks in this space really having that conversation, but that is a position that can be taken. Gary Chambers, when he had that viral moment, that's exactly what he was kind of addressing, that there's folks on the school board looking to shop on Zulily or Lane Bryant, whatever store she was trying to shop from. Yeah, LLB, whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, that's typical, Mike.
But folks were in this space not getting behind him, but we're getting behind multi-point agendas from other academics. That was the kind of confusion that I had with this space as a whole, that there's a lot of folks who get behind, these certain agendas for black men that haven't been materialized on the ground, and the actual folks that are actually doing the work are not being supported at all. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So when
it does make sense though, Mike. It does make sense.
But when Sandog and I were having this conversation was that, on one hand, you have these candidates running for office on the right, black men, John James, Daniel Cameron, name your black conservative new generation candidate. And then you have a whole bunch of black men who sit in black male social spaces who are either registered to vote or not registered to vote or don't participate in the system as a whole, and thinking that, there's this sort of impact that the space is having, but can't actually prove it. So how are you going to be organized on that side if folks are not actually engaging the candidates, and the candidates aren't engaging the citizenry of that demographic? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense at the end of the day.
Well, I think the other thing too, to your point too, Dr. Phoenix, is when you look at even something like the student loan forgiveness that you called out, that's sort of a byproduct of just where, like you said, black men are. And if you could actually correct those other issues, something like that may only appeal to like 20 or 30% of black men could appeal to like 80% of black men if you could actually, to your point, get the higher high school graduation rates, get the actual mentors as well as skills to enroll in college. I think that's another sort of flawed view just of policy in general, of saying, oh, well, because that's one thing you hear out of the manosphere as well, is, oh, student loan debt is cancellation is going to disproportionately help black women. But I'm like, it could help black men if you were in the position to actually take advantage of higher education. So you can't just write off a policy because people aren't in a position when it's really something that they need to be in a position to take advantage of if they want to be competitive.
Well, don't forget, Renaissance man, that they're not just affirmative action that they're attacking, from the judicial portion. They're also attacking now United Negro College Fund, something that black men would definitely benefit from. So yes, I don't see a whole lot of folks actually defending any of this.
Hey, can I show you guys something?
And no, and you're right, Mike. And that was kind of that was the point that I was making to what's his name, Sandal, earlier. Is that, yeah, you've had some external factors that have weighed on your ability to be successful in this world. In particular, it's pretty powerful to be a military officer in this world. It doesn't even matter what rank you're at. That's just a hell of a thing to be able to put on a resume, on a CV, whatever. So you don't have a lot of folks that can do that. And the simple fact that you were military and you So you didn't have to worry about the education component. You don't have to worry about student loan debt. But what about the vast majority of people who are not in the military, who are going to go through it the traditional way?
DC, you have anything you want to add to this?
I wanted to actually show you guys something real quick before we shift.
Let me give you sharing privileges.
Yeah, I just want to share a photo.
Go right ahead.
Okay. All right, I'm sharing right now. Let me know when you got it. And you guys
I can see
it?
I can see it.
All right, so right now, I took this photo the other day. I was doing a site survey. We're moving another MACOM into a space that INCOM used to control. So INCOM is losing the space and another MACOM is getting the space. So as the leading project manager, I had to meet with a whole bunch of big wigs down there.
I'm sorry, what's MACOM?
Landcom is taking over.
Okay.
Yeah, so not the, a lot of people don't know what we'll be talking about, but this is Army shit. So as a senior project manager on the project, I have to go down and do site survey. So while I was doing the site survey, I took this photo. And I want to tell you what's missing from this photo, but also want to tell you what's coming behind this photo. And this is what's happening right now under the current administration. I want you to see all those black men. The black man at the top, that's General Hamilton. He's the AMC general, 4-star. The two command sergeant majors down there, AMC command sergeant major and the MCOM command sergeant major, brothers. You have the Secretary of Defense, a brother. You have the Joint Chief that's coming in right now, Air Force General, brother. And who's not on here?
Charles Brown. Charles Q. Brown.
Correct. Who else is not on here is the two brothers right now who are running things in the European theater, which is General Williams, who's a 4-star, who runs USARA, the command I work for. And then you have another brother who's running AFRICOM, who's a Marine 4-star. Y'all probably seen him on TV in front of Congress. We have right now, we don't have black women. We have black men in positions of power, major positions of power. So people don't know what AMC is. AMC stands for Army Material Command. And I want you to do your own homework. Then I want you to do what MCOM is. You're dealing with the resources of the military. That's what these brothers are running. And that's what's happened under the current administration. What happened under the Trump administration was a complete whiteout. Now I'm going to tell you what the problem is with this photo. The reason why these brothers were able to be elevated and given the opportunities to be elevated because they're already in the pipe, right? They weren't given these opportunities when Trump was in office because Trump was making it a concerted point to put white male power as the representation of American power. So every time and I actually did a video of this showing photos of him with his cabinet at his table with white men. He made it a point to project white power. So when a brother comes to me and talks to conservative stuff, I'm like, okay, well, all right. Outside of Ben Carson, which was a political appointment, what other
and he
black
put him
person
over, and he put him over HUD.
Yeah, he put him over HUD, something he had no business being over. What black person was elevated? So what are you getting? You're not even getting empowerment. You're not even getting positions of power. And I'm gonna tell you something what these brothers are doing. From the Eric Escasios and the civilians that are under them, all we're doing is hiring black people, specifically black men. That's happening in real time. We can't talk about it. We can't show it, right? We can't flaunt it like black women can, or women can, or gays can, right? We can't do that, but we do it covertly. So that's the trade-off. Unfortunately, we can't get the pat on the head like everybody else because of the history of the country, because of the current dynamics of the country, because of the political situation of the country, and because you have a white nationalist movement actively happening on the right now. So all of this has to be done covertly. But if you want to take a snapshot, like what I'm showing you right on the screen, this is what it is. And like I said, there's 3 people missing from this picture. There's 3 other black men, the Joint Chief of Staff, the USARA commander, and you have the AFRICOM commander. Commanders.
It's interesting that you bring that up because no administration has promoted this many black men ever in the history of this country.
And we can't even talk about it. We can't even celebrate it.
And
but
I was going to say another thing too that Jay Sean, you probably know about. I know DC because I learned about it on your panel last time when you all talked about staying in the lawns of military law enforcement, that realm. I believe you and Paradox brought up the new FBI headquarters going up in PG County. And
Yeah, that's right.
basically, I'm assuming that can mainly be, basically attributed to the Biden administration. I think Paradox, a conservative, even acknowledged that hey, that's why that's there is basically Biden is in power. And, you could, I went and Googled articles, and I mean, Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, was not happy. They wanted it in Northern Virginia. But, that is the outcome of political power and who's in charge and who can say what goes where, what resources go where.
Right.
Exactly. And most importantly, this is the most important part of it. There's also a knowledge base that comes with it too, the business of it. You know what I mean? Being in certain parts of government, doing acquisitions, doing contracting, doing project management, you get to learn how much things cost. You get to learn how things work. You get to see the ins and outs of things, and it's business. So as you bring other people along, you're also multiplying that knowledge base, right? So if I hire one brother to come on to do or help a brother get an acquisitions position, you see what I'm saying? He's going to help somebody else, or he's going to just go off and do great things at minimum. All right, he's going to be a productive Black man. He's going to have a good and strong household. He's going to have his finances in order, and he's going to be another good face that's out there doing business. The reason why I push back on the passport bros, as I know, I don't have a problem with traveling, but I've always said that I have a stake in it because I'm a Black man in the world. So when I see Black men running around with a passport in one hand and a dick in the other, that looks bad on me because I'm trying to do business in the world. And I know there's other Black men who want to do business in the world. And I want our representation and I want our perception to be one of doing business. Not the stereotype of us lusting for women.
Well, let's look at the lower end of the spectrum. A lot of brothers who do have these criminal backgrounds that can be expunged now, so that they can actually get these federal jobs that they would not been able to get before.
No, you can get them before. It's just that I mean, the federal government is the most honest and fairest hiring system ever.
Yeah,
like you can clearly say you killed somebody. They don't give a damn as long as it's disclosed on the actual application, and they have to actually treat you like a qualified applicant. Oh no, man, that's always been the case. Like,
well, no.
Fair.
Yeah, I think what he was talking to was like certain jobs. Like I know people that work at the Pentagon now that are security clearances.
Okay,
security clearances. Working for the government is different. So I think when people hear that, so like if you want to do IT security work at the Pentagon or any of these other places, that's why I brought it up because like they were talking about this. This maybe been like two to 3 months back where they were talking about what have Biden did. And I get it. I understand the initial 92 crime bill, but we have to have an honest discussion about that. That's not right now, but we have to talk about what the environment was at that particular time, how people looked at other Black people at that time. And you may be shocked to figure out what was said as far as Black people are concerned in churches and all that type of stuff. That was a political push to get that bill passed. That was a devil's bargain.
Can I quickly add something before I forgot, because I meant to say this earlier. Speaking of the environments, you just said that word, DC. The one thing I wanted to add about the photo I showed you guys, because those brothers were in the pipe, excuse me. What's not doing politics right now, what politics is representation, right? So it's a game of representation. If we're not pushing to get Black men, young Black men, into the pipe, what's going to happen in the next 15 years is that wall is going to be Asian and white and others. You understand me? Because they are doing politics. And as they do politics, they're advocating for their people to get what? Not just resources, but positions. So they're going to be the ones coming up behind us. So what you see on the walls now, because we were already in the pipe, right? Based on the legacy of our advocacy and other advocacy of our African Americans. But if we're not advocating right now, the environment will change.
Yeah,
agreed.
That's very true. I think it was you, Dr. Phoenix, said it earlier that instant gratification, but that's the thing. I think people have to acknowledge that. To your point, Jay Sean, the people who have the experience to get in the pipeline. So when they want to say, okay, we want a Black Supreme Court justice, or we want a Black person promoted to a 4-star general, you actually have someone. They can't just say, oh, well, you know, they're gonna pick someone who's not qualified. You have people who've had those experiences, who just need that, you know, that one mentor, that one opportunity that they just couldn't get, that pushes them over the top. So that's a great point.
I mean, it's just no different than a chessboard. I mean, you got to move all your pieces on the chessboard, from the pawns all the way back to the queen. And unfortunately, a lot of guys don't understand the strategy of chess, and when it comes to politics, and when it comes to your government opportunities. The military industrial complex is an area that Black men should be a part of. As it stands right now. Yeah, as it stands right now.
There's no reason why Black men shouldn't be dominating that area. Like, no reason.
I mean, as it stands right now, less than 1% of those contracts actually go to Black folks. So how do you even, have a conversation about doing things on the right if folks are not going to actually advocate for your interests on there?
Well, so, as someone who works in that space, the other thing that should be highlighted with those promotions and these people who are in those positions of authority, it's not just that they're in those positions. When they retire, those men will be sought out, highly sought out, for their knowledge, for their relationships, for their experience, whether it be, because I've seen the ones who have retired, know them personally. They go on to either start their own consulting firm, work at another consulting firm as like a partner, get hired into one of the big primes as a business development vice president, and go work on like the Hill, or go become like a VP of a line of business at one of those companies. Or like I said, or hey, if you're to that point and you're that well off, some of them may, just go be chilling and may go write a book or go teach or something like that. But it's not even just the job, it's what it opens up afterwards. And then once you get that effect of them in industry, or in their own firm, or doing what they're doing, that opens the door to other people who may have not even gone the military route, who may just be working, in more of the civilian realm, to have someone who's a mentor, someone who's an advocate, someone who can hire other people into the positions as well.
Well, I think additionally, earlier there were some comments, I can't remember who made them, about Black women in education and such. Let's just be frank here. Black women are far more engaged. I know someone else had said that previously. Black women are far more engaged than Black men. Hell, even Black men in education who got doctorates or whatever, they're not as engaged as Black women are. And the unfortunate part of it is that for Black women in particular, they get their degrees, they get their qualifications, their doctorates, whatever, and they go on to build nonprofits and things like that that help to push younger Black females into whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's into entrepreneurship, STEM, engineering, whatever. They make it a point to go help bring in other folks, but then again, they're supported by other Black women, including Black women who aren't necessarily educated themselves.
The Pine Nine.
With Black men, you see this disconnect where, okay,
that's a fact.
Educated Black men, non-educated Black men are sitting here fighting each other. Oh, the educated Black men think they're better than the non-educated Black men. The non-educated Black men think that, oh, we're sitting here, we're better than these educated because they're clowns because they went to school. So no, this is what goes on with Black men, is that basically there's a lot of ego involved, and Black men can't seem for one reason or another get on the same page and just work together as a group. But then again, part of that problem is that, well, we got to bring along the failures, we got to bring along the dudes that just done destroyed every damn thing, and say, well, they're reformed.
Hey, Dr. Phoenix.
Does a tiger change his stripes? I'm sorry, I think I missed that point.
Hey, Dr. Phoenix. So the question is, right, for Black men, what is professionalism? Matter of fact, you know what? I got a good point to make. MOT, you still here?
That's actually a very good point.
Yeah, I'm still here.
MOT, me and you had a passionate debate about this a few years ago, right? It was kind of a big live stream on MOT's channel. On the Prophet of Thought series channel, right? Now, MOT, you remember in that debate, there was a point in there where I said, later on in the debate, I was like, I said to him to the point is that, yeah, if if I can help MOT get a contract, I would do so because he's a black man. And Taz said to me, he said, well, why would you do that? Why would you help somebody you disagree with be more successful so he could do things that you disagree with? And my response to him, MOT, if I'm not correct, correct me, was that because he's a black man and that's business. Business has nothing to do with our disagreement. That was my response to Taz in real time.
Yeah, and for that debate, I mean, my positions are kind of where yours are at right now, because the only people they wanted to. You saw something that I didn't see. That was going to happen.
That's a whole nother conversation, MOT. But you my brother. Right, cool. You my brother. But I just wanted to point out a situation just that everybody can go look at as an example of how professional black men and black men should be behaving. Me and MOT were really at odds at that point too. You know what I mean? But he's still my brother, and business is business. You know what I mean? So even in the middle of that situation where he was trying to pull me to be adversarial to the MOT, even though we were already in a debate, my position on business was what didn't change. If that black man has a company and I can help him get a contract and he's hiring other black people, I don't give a shit what we get disagree about.
Yeah.
I don't care.
That's kind of why on the Black Brain Trust, why I started doing the tech talks a few years ago, that trying to get those who are not technical into the technical realm so they can get closer to the opportunities. Because it's what their political leanings are and what their beliefs are immaterial to me. Right. As long as we get more numbers, increase our numbers in the industry, that's all that really matters. But it seems like in this space, you have to be anti-black woman in order to participate in their discussions, and it's like, nah, man, I can't agree with that. I can't.
I mean, but it's the only way that they can suck in the most people is by doing that. And I know what the problem is, and people need to understand this is what the issue is. They want to sabotage the entire system unless they're put first, unless their name is put on something. And that's a problem because no one wants to study up on the system. No one wants to follow a particular process. No one wants to bring a knowledge base to the table. Nobody wants to do that. But what they do want to do is they want to be like, look, we're going to fake like we're going to go over here unless you give us everything that we want. And it's like, you're already not going to get anything over there. So why are you even over there? So they're like, well, you know what? And it's like, bro, power is established and it takes time. If they give you power like that overnight, you're going to upset the entire system. And they're like, they don't care. And it's like, this is why I just refuse to talk and even deal with them or even have patience. Because at the end of the day, this is a very easy system. It's very easy if you participate. If you don't participate, and you have all these left-wing things that you actually want, and you don't have a side pick or that you're a libertarian at best, dude, you're going to be here for a while. You're going to be here forever. Maintaining the same system that's here.
But the thing that kills me too, MOT, is they completely ignore the fact that, okay, if you go into the right, these people voted for 50 years to repeal Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
And you're saying, oh, if I don't get something from the left or from Democrats in one election cycle, I'm done. I'm like,
every election cycle.
Yeah. And I'm like, you think you're going to go to the right, which already has a lot of outward animosity. You're going to go in small numbers and you're going to get what you want in one election cycle.
Just so that way they can stop showing up the moment that's over.
No, I think part of the problem is here, which is what I was alluding to earlier, is this socio-cultural issues that people are trying to conflate with political issues. And this is intentional, in my opinion. Part of the problem is that if you have young black males who are not focused, who have no purpose, that is a socio-cultural issue. That is something that should be happening in their internal environment, because if they're focused and they have purpose, they understand that everything is things like these are a process. It takes time. You do not just quote go get an undergraduate degree in political science or whatever, and then magically you sit on the bench as a Supreme Court justice. No, it doesn't happen like that. These folks have to be made into this. They have to be made into Supreme Court justices. No more different than you have to be made into a physician or a surgeon or a nurse or whatever. You have to be made into this. Just because you quote went to school is not the sum totality of what makes you that. What makes you that is the fact that you went to school, you went through all this training in addition to the schooling, or in the case of justices, you might have sat at a lower court, or you might have been a prosecutor or district attorney, whatever. And so these are folks who this becomes a lifetime issue. And again, if you have young black males that don't understand the concept and what it means to be focused throughout a lifetime, that these things take time, that there is no you wake up one day and magically you got $10 million sitting in the bank, and because somebody gave you reparations. This is not how this works. And unfortunately, in Black America, among black men, and I blame a lot of this falls at the feet of older black men, where they have not taken up the reins and have not properly, or I should say, have not socially acclimated young males to the way the world works. You're going to have to learn to work with other folks. That's just the nature of things. Especially since that there's so few of us who are actually doing things of any real substance out here. You're gonna have to unfortunately work with other folks. And even if you had larger numbers of black men, you're still gonna have to work with other people. That's just the way of the world. But this idea where everything we can do all this by ourselves. We don't need this. Oh yeah, we just divest from this political ideology and this ideation. Oh, this is gonna get us what we need. And no, that's not happening. Hell, if you look just in purely in a medical sense, if you look at a lot of conservatively controlled states, most of these states don't even have Part B Medicare.
A lot of legs, a lot of limbs being amputated down in South Carolina for black folks.
Lots.
Man, I can do a stream on this every single day of the week for the next year, and I wouldn't hit 20% of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm just one person. If there were more men who were committed to this cause, because black men love to talk about all this crap about, oh, black women this, black women that, black women getting degrees, yeah, but black women also outpacing black men in medicine.
Yeah, I mean, but these are positions that they work for, that they work towards. You can track this.
Yeah.
These type of statistics, and it's like more people want to get their ish off about this woman online rather than participate in basic political things. A lot of these people live in states where they don't have the Medicaid expansion to get the Affordable Care Act, and they just freely stay there. And then they talk about their issues of health care. Like,
you saw that during COVID. A lot of black men would turn back and go home. You had no health care coverage. You had, no insurance, nothing. Go home and go home and die.
It's even worse than that, Mike. MOT, where I've been seeing this trend over the last year or two where black folks are saying, well, we need to leave the Democrats and all this law. Oh yeah, they passed this issue to help make medication lower, reduce the cost of medications and such like that. This doesn't really affect us. This is for everyone. This is not exclusively for us. Let's be clear about something. I can talk for the next 48 hours straight about the numbers of black men who need liver transplants and how that number has spiked exponentially in the last 15 to 20 years. Previously, it was generally white men, Native Americans, who generally had some of the highest rates of who were some of the highest recipients of liver transplants. Now you got black men leading. And for various reasons, alcohol, black men, black folks, black men in particular, love to drink, being obese, overweight, a lot of issues related to that. But more importantly, you have all these issues that disproportionately affects black men, and you have a handful of black folks out here you don't even hear about these. If you go into the, you go out here, you go out here, people aren't really talking about this. There's only folks like me as a black man, I would talk about it. Other black men will talk about it in similar perfections. But as a whole, these things do not get discussed. Why? Because apparently black men just don't give a damn. Unless it truly is about some culture warrior, social warrior issue that you have, it doesn't matter. You can sit here, be lying on the side of the road with jaundice and dying of liver failure, and who gives a damn?
Yeah, Dr. Phoenix, no, great point. One thing sort of I didn't realize the other day, I was just doing some research, reading. I didn't realize, speaking to your point of health, just healthcare in general, underrepresentation, and you know, people in their home environments. I was reading, and I'm sure you can confirm this. They were saying if you want a child to like be a doctor, because they always talk about um the number of people whose like parents are physicians, and how their kids go on, and just how that, or someone in the family, how that affects it. They said basically a child needs to start at age 7, like attending science fairs, like getting good grades in school, just learning more about science, interest in medicine.
That's STEM. That's STEM in general, Renaissance man. That's STEM in general. I didn't get started into tech when it comes to electronics and soldering until about 8 or 9 years old. And so you need it all the way around. And I think that there's not enough investment. I mean, I think you're starting to see some of the nonprofits and whatnot get involved. Especially, I think the NBA has played a critical role in Black communities and donating a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars to STEM programs, to like the K through 8 back areas. But in terms of federal funding, that stuff has been largely stymied by Republicans for the most part.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, this one was just related to doctors, but I can definitely see the same thing with STEM. Because I mean, I've known. I'll never forget being in grad school, and there's a guy. He had a PhD from the Mayo Clinic, as well as he got his MD. So he did an MD PhD. So like over 6 years of school, medical related. I'll never forget him telling me, because I was like, wow, when did you like know and want to go and do all this? And I'll never forget, his dad was a doctor, and he talked about being 5 years old in his lab doing experiments with him. And that's when it really just hit me of like, for that level of accomplishment, that's when the seed had to be really planted. And just to your point, Dr. Phoenix, and to your point, Mike, of those things for, I'm sure, other fields as well. And to your point, Dr. Phoenix, of just how far we are behind in that regard. Just not even just politics, but just the actual culture itself.
Oh
yeah, I wanted to actually get in on this. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
just really quickly, Ryle, really quickly before you.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying, Dr. Phoenix.
Yeah, the fundamental issue is that no, Mike V is right in saying that this is pretty much general across the board for all of STEM, but medical sciences in particular are a little different because so much of what makes it key, what makes you get to that level, what helps you become is being able to meet and get mentored by these folks. So you can have things that teach you some science caps, teach you stuff like that. But the big determining factor, in my opinion, is your ability to get into those social circles that allow you to meet these folks. And if you don't have the ability to do that, then yeah, the only way to stand out then becomes academically. You can show that you're talented academically. So that's the only other option. And so again, if there isn't a concerted effort to make sure that the young Black children and Black boys in specific are not getting that level of discipline, because this is a discipline process. You talked about an MD PhD program. 6 years is actually pretty short for those. Generally, those programs are close to 8 years. They can be really long. That's why so many medical students do not opt to do MD, PhD programs, because of just the insane length of them. They can be anywhere between 7 to 8 years.
There's a lot of commitment to that.
So, that's not even including. I'm sorry, say again.
You basically got to give up your 20s. Go ahead, Dr.
Oh no, you can give up your 20s and your 30s.
30s, yeah,
Most
30s too.
most folks who go in, I think there's a misnomer. Most people who go into medicine, you're going to give up a significant amount of your 20s and 30s. You go give up pretty much all your 20s, and depending on what you do in medicine, you might end up giving up all your 30s and maybe some of those early years in your 40s, depending on what you do.
Mhm.
This is why typically you see a lot of the older physicians and surgeons, they're riding around in Porsches. Why? Because yeah, by the time they hit 50 years old, yeah, they don't paid off all the student loan debt or whatever. And yeah, they actually got some money to work with.
Mhm.
So
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
good to hear you, Doc. It's been a minute. It's always good to hear you, and everybody else as well. Jay Sean, peace. Um, yeah, you know, my fiance, she got an associate's uh, in revenue cycle management recently, and the brother who is a brother who gave the commencement, and I don't think Black people really understand the breadth of the opportunities that's actually in the healthcare field, specifically Black men. Um, Most people, when they think about healthcare, they're thinking about the delivery side. They're thinking about the doctors and the nurses and surge techs and things like that. There's a whole completely different component to healthcare from the administrative side perspective, where that's where really the money is. And we got a chance to talk to this brother, and he talked to us about the the shortage of people in healthcare and how badly there are people needed in healthcare. And he talked about also how it's been so hard to get Black men interested in the healthcare field throughout the years, even when he first started. And he had been in healthcare for about 30, almost 40 years. And he actually has an organization dedicated to Black men's health concerns. I think it's called blackmenhealth.org. I think that's what it is. And he was letting us know that just in Austin alone, the city of Austin, there at the particular time, this was a few months ago, there are about 8,500 available jobs just in Austin in healthcare. And the point that I really thought was important, what Dr. Phoenix was talking about when he focused on the nonprofits from the Black females side of things, because this is where Black men are, we really are dropping the ball in terms of the nonprofit sector. Just to give y'all some numbers, I think in 2021, I think it was the numbers that I saw recently in terms of money given to the nonprofit sector. There were about $500 billion given to the nonprofit sector. And for a lot of people who don't understand this, the nonprofit sector deals with people who are trying to bring solutions to society's problems, because contrary to popular belief, the government can't solve all the problems in society. They just don't have the wherewithal. They just don't have the intelligence capability to do so. So this is where private citizens come in, and they tackle things that they feel that need to be addressed. And this is where your nonprofit money comes in to fund these endeavors. So what we've been covering, me and Complex, we've been talking about is how many of these Black male academics, I'm gonna be honest with you, because I've seen them up close and personal. I've been around the pro-Black types, the African American studies departments and all of that type of stuff. And to be quite honest, those males, they really dropped the ball from late 90s era, 2000s on. They really were not focused on setting up organizations that were bringing attention to issues, specifically for Black males. And like Dr. Phoenix was saying, many of these females, they switch, even if they started out with the pro-Black stuff, they went from the community group stuff and they switched to the gender stuff. And this is where Black men keep dropping the ball. We have to become gender specific too. Like I know, that's not really been our training. I know we've been group oriented and all of that type of stuff.
Where is that going to be facilitated, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm saying gender specific because when it comes to resources and in terms of money, like in terms of that side of things, Black men have more wealth in the United States than Black females do. The problem is we don't concentrate it in the right way. And that's where we keep falling short. And so until we start really getting to that specific side of things, setting up these entities, like I was on the panel with BGS one time, and I asked them specifically, okay, well, you say you got these PhDs here. Well, where is their organization at? Where is their nonprofit organization that's addressing the things that y'all are talking about that we can possibly show some support to bring an alleviation to some of these problems that y'all are talking to, especially as it relates to Black boy illiteracy issues. And that's how you interface in the system. You need a nonprofit, for-profit, some type of entity, political action committee to interface with the system. We have a problem of understanding how to create the entities necessary to interface in the system. Do we have some Black men who understand this? Yes, we do. But in terms of a true understanding from a collective standpoint, no, we don't. And this is why we keep having these same circle jerk type of conversations. Meanwhile, we're falling further and further behind, even though I was just reading an article the other day that focused on how nearly half of US companies are axing college degree requirements. And so in terms of employment, and so in some of your big companies like Walmart, IBM, some of these other places, some of these places are funding certain things in a way that if we just get into the game and start taking advantage of these things, instead of your belly aching, we can actually make some headway, but we're not taking advantage of things that are actually being made available to us.
Well, the reason why I'm asking that question is because when you start talking about the socio-economic issues of Black men, there has to be some legislation behind it. But where is that going to be facilitated? And that's kind of what I think some folks were kind of pushing back on Sandog about, as to on what side is any of this going to take action on, because you're going to need some bipartisan support. And as it stands right now, I don't see many folks on the other side of the left engaging in that kind of conversation. It can't just be a nonprofit thing. It has to be some actual legislation on the table. And if we don't actually have both parties on board, I don't think most of these things are going to be taken seriously on the ground, because you're going to have to get some people behind it. And I don't see it happening. I mean, the Congresswoman out of Florida, I think her name is Frederica Wilson. I think she's the one that spearheaded the whole the socioeconomic status of Black men and boys in this country. Mm-hmm. She started the initiative on that, and she was only able to get Marco Rubio to get on board, and you don't even see him talking about it, primarily because his party is hostile towards those kind of conversations. And so I'm saying that the idea of a nonprofit sounds nice and all, but you still need some legislation on the table, which is what they're trying to facilitate in that. The commission to study the status of Black men and boys. It's only coming from one side, and if we don't got both sides on the ticket, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense long term. And so it sounds great in theory, but in on the ground from a practical application standpoint, there's only one side actually advocating for it.
Well, let me give some pushback, because when you look at the available grant money that has been pushed out, either from foundation perspectives, charities, even public entities, state and federal government, there's plenty of money that are put out there to address certain issues in society that can actually alleviate some of these issues that we're talking about. But in order to get that money, you need an entity. That's the issue. There's money out there. I've been on apprenticeship.gov. I've seen plenty of grant money on there. There's plenty of money on there. I literally have my own database where I'm searching for grants all the time. The issue is we're not connected to the funding sources. We're not connected to the funding sources because, quite frankly, a lot of us just don't even know how to go about looking for the money. We have a problem in terms of locating information that can actually bring some solutions to what we have. There are things out there in terms of money, public money, government issue money. There are grants that you can get from the DOJ dealing with issues in terms of Black communities like recidivism and things like that. The issue is that we're not putting we're not like the females. The female, I saw it in college. I saw plenty of these Black women form organizations, take grant writing classes. They put themselves in the position to get the money. They went away from the group and they went to the gender and focused on getting the money. And that's where we're dropping the ball at. There is money out there. We just need to make the case of why we need to get that money to address some of the issues that we want to address for us.
Because Black women can coalition with other groups. Right? Black women can coalition with LGBTQ. They can coalition with transgender. You can see transgender persons out there at the Women's March. Right? So Black women are good at coalition building. Black men are not.
Right. That's the issue. Yeah. It was what Doc Phoenix was saying too.
Yeah, it's not just about working with other Black men. They can't even work with other groups. So if you got folks in here, saying, I don't want to work with Africans or I don't want to work with these Caribbeans.
Oh, no, that ain't me.
But I'm not saying it's you. I'm saying
yeah.
If you can't coalition build, how are you going to get anything done? If you can't get any legislation passed, how are you going to get anything done? You can do things from a nonprofit at the surface level, but at the long term, you're going to need some legislation put in place. And if you don't got no legislation put in place, if you're not coalition building, none of this is going to be, tangible on the long term. It's just not. It's not feasible in my point of view. It's just not feasible. And I think what we're looking at on screen, the commission on this social status of Black men and boys, I think that's exactly what they're doing. If you ever watch their quarterly meetings, that's exactly what they're doing. But in this space, when you show that, a lot of folks drop off and say, you guys are just vote blue no matter who. Well, who are you going to coalition with? Who are you going to work with? Because only one party is really advocating for this. Name your congressional or Senate member on the right that's actually advocating for this. I don't see it. When's the last time you heard from J.C. Watts? Or when's the last time you heard from even Byron Donalds, who's sitting in Congress right now? He doesn't even advocate for it. Tim Scott, he's a no call, no show, empty suit. Even when those brothers are in office, they're not even advocating for them, advocating for other brothers. It's a two-way street, is what I'm saying. It's a two-way street. The one opportunity that they can do it, they won't even do it themselves.
When you look at people like, so Cornel West, he said he was going to run for the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to him. I listened to what he said. This dude platform was complete lunacy. He literally started out saying that his focus was he focused on mass incarceration. Now, I'm not a person that's not compassionate about, brothers and sisters who, especially falsely accused of any crime being locked up. But when you come out here saying that you're trying to help a group of people that are literally locked up, not the people that's on the outside, but your focus is on people that you really can't even really get to at this particular time. You know what I would have liked to see somebody like Cornel West say? Look, I've been having conversations with what's the guy for that gave the money to Morehouse? What's his name?
Robert F. Smith.
Robert F. Smith. I've been having some conversations about how we could spur community development, and we came up with some ideas, and this is what we want to put out here. Remember, for all the talk about a lot of these dudes in this space that talked about, Jeff Bezos and, the divorce of him and his wife, Mackenzie Bezos gave about, man, how much money did she give? She gave billions of dollars to HBCUs. She gave billions of dollars to HBCUs that allow HBCUs to actually spur their endowment. You have Black people in these places that were like, we have never had this amount of money given to us at one time. It put them in a position to hire better professors, which draw more people into your school, because a lot of people are going to look up the school, the records, the profiles of your professors, giving people tenure positions that could really be comfortable in there so they could really develop the discipline and things of that nature. This is from a private perspective. These people had never gotten any of that kind of money from the government. This was a private donation.
Yeah, but that the reason why they're not getting any money from the government, because those same conservative governments are the ones withholding it.
I agree with Mike. I think a lot of that, what goes on, a lot of that is being blocked by a lot of the conservatives in government. So yeah, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't want to give Mackenzie, Scott, any sort of credit on this, because she's a philanthropist. That's what she's supposed to do. But she didn't do it when she was with her husband. She's only doing it after she got the divorce. And so the monies that she's given now is not necessarily what she wants to keep anyway. She even said that she was going to spend all that money. It was just how she was going to spend it. And so rather than, give her kudos for the money that she's giving away, I would like to hold these elected officials accountable for the money they're withholding from these land-granted institutions. That's where the conversation for me is where that's where the conversation needs to start, not from where the philanthropists are coming from.
Yeah. I'm not saying that those policies shouldn't be changed. I'm saying that it needs to be a versatility in the approach. We have to have a versatile approach, because at the end of the day, those HBCUs very much appreciated that money. They don't give a damn what her position was.
Yeah, but they appreciated Cosby's money too. Yeah, they appreciated Cosby's money. They didn't give that back after he went to jail.
Right,
after they threw him under the bus. I'm saying, legislation is important. Parties are important. Sides being taken is important. And unfortunately, we have a lot of folks who don't want to take a side, but want, action to be materialized. And that's just not going to happen. You got to take a side. And in this space, a lot of folks are like, well, I'm an independent, or, I don't have a side, but I want action to be taken, and I have an agenda that has multiple points to it. And I'm like, well, who are you going to caucus with, and who are you going to get that, who you going to coalition build with?
Well, again, going back to the beginning of this conversation, Mike and Rael, the fundamental problem I have is that the gentleman you start out with, Sando, he is I assume, retired military officer.
Yeah.
He is the recipient of all the things he's done right in his life. So again, went to college. Going to college allowed him to become a commissioned officer in the United States Army. And that led to what he's doing now. So again, all of these things that he's done in his life are a direct result of him, quote, being educated. Because if he didn't have an education, he couldn't be an officer in the military. And becoming an officer in the military led to the stuff he's doing now. And so again, to me, that's just a very disingenuous point to be coming from. It really is. It's just very disingenuous to say that, and then just to blow off the issue of people out here asking for student loan forgiveness by saying that, well, it only affects, like, realistically about 25% of Black men. And again, for a lot of folks, especially for folks who go on to medical school, student loan forgiveness ain't gonna do nothing for you. You ain't gonna get student loan forgiveness. For the handful of black men that do go to medical school or some of these other health professions, student loan forgiveness is not gonna really help you.
At least
So
not
I mean,
immediately.
again, well, no, not immediately, but I mean, the problem is, for example, if you got the average medical student coming out with anywhere between $300,000 to $500,000 in student loans, 20 grand might cover the interest you're getting. I mean, let's just be frank here. But the point of what I'm getting at is that as a whole, student loan forgiveness won't necessarily have a big bearing on me per se, but I still do believe in it because I think, yeah, it would be nice to give. It would certainly be nice if you had a lot of young black people coming out of college and they're not saddled with a bunch of student loan debt. That gives them the ability to go out there and do to do the things they really want to do without being burdened with student loan debt. Again, there was a follow up to after Robert F. Smith donated, paid off the loans of those Morehouse graduates a few years ago. There was a follow up article to that. I want to say maybe about a year or so ago, and a lot of those gentlemen from Morehouse who we paid off their student loans, a lot of them started nonprofits and businesses because they didn't have to worry about paying off student loans.
And he paid the parents' student loan debt off as well in that.
Yep.
Yeah, and again, to say that, oh yeah, well, it doesn't have a bearing on black men. Well, these black men directly benefited from somebody paying off their student loans.
You know what he did, Dr. Phoenix, is he pushed the government to actually start the whole student loan debt consolidation conversation, because he proved that if it can be done, what comes out of it? And now the conversation isn't even happening at the federal level only because of Robert F. Smith.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I'd say,
Absolutely.
other thing I'd say too, Dr. Phoenix, I think even if it's not even student loan forgiveness, the Biden administration, one of the things that they've done, I think you at least got to give them credit, that is that they've tried to be creative of, okay, if they're going to shoot it down this way, they've even implemented an income-based sort of repayment schedule. So even if you're someone who, you're not in a position, your debt is so high that
you only have to pay 5%.
Yeah, basically your monthly payment is capped at 5%, and I believe there's a wipeout period as well too. So I mean, that's another angle to these things as well, is that there's the blanket forgiveness angle, but then there's the changes that they've made to the actual repayment plans, coupled with some of these people who went to private institutions that shut down. He wiped those out as well.
Let me address this in the chat. From Clay Bisbee. It says he's adding Shonda H, and he says the Biden administration cut the budget to the HBCUs. Let me read this off the DOE, Department of Education. Fact sheet: Biden-Harris administration highlights a record of champion historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs. Right, in his executive order reestablishing the White House initiative on historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, President Joe Biden charged the initiative to, quote, develop new and expand pre-existing national networks of individuals, organizations, and communities to share and implement administrative and programmatic best practices related to advancing educational equity, excellence, and opportunity at HBCUs. Let me just scroll down here. Also highlighting that 40% of all black engineers come from HBCUs, 50% of all black teachers, 70% of all black doctors and dentists, and 80% of all black judges. Okay.
Mike,
Yes.
you're responding to Clayton Bigsby, the blind black white supremacist from Dave Chappelle's show.
Let me just finish reading this, because it's not so much about him, but just to make the statement that the left, that you don't get anything out of the Democratic Party. Well, here we go. Right, the Biden-Harris administration has taken historic actions to support HBCUs, including by investing over $7 billion in HBCUs, which includes $3.6 billion for HBCUs through the American Rescue Plan and other COVID relief, $1.6 billion in capital finance debt relief for 45 public and private HBCUs, $1.7 billion in grant funding to expand academic capacity and provide support for low-income students. who would be the most low income outside of Black women would be Black men. I mean, we've heard the story. I don't know if anybody's heard the story from Mark Lamont Hill, how he was homeless when he went to Morehouse.
Hey, Mike V.
Okay. Yes, sir.
You know what? That is such a common occurrence.
Hey, Doc.
I saw when I was an undergrad a number of young Black males who are homeless or just insecure in general in housing, and this is something that doesn't get talked about. Hell, all these damn Black male PhDs out here, they don't talk about
I saw it too. I saw it too. I saw it in undergrad too. I sure did.
This is a common occurrence. I can I can have my wife come up here and she can tell you about this. She talks of she knew a couple of guys that she was friends with in undergrad. Yeah, they were homeless.
Right.
So this is a common occurrence with Black males. And again, if you have Black men as a collective that are not dealing with these issues, because again, these guys are homeless at a period in which they should be developing their networks. They should be bolstering their academic bona fides. And again, they're having to deal with these socioeconomic issues. And this is so much, this is not, I wouldn't even necessarily say this is a political issue as much as this is a socio-cultural issue. Young Black males in college homeless, that's a socio-cultural issue.
Well, we saw a number.
You have to ask yourself, where are the families and what the hell is happening that led to them being homeless?
And all the action that comes from it, like some of them sleeping on couches in one of these dormitories and having police called on. Again, was getting their brains blown out. When I was in Atlanta a few years ago, staggering to see how many unhoused Black men were down there. Between 18 to 24.
You went to the Manosphere meetup, Mike?
No, I've been back and forth between Atlanta now for the last year and a half or so, and I can tell you now the levels of Black male homelessness. I've never seen anything like what I've seen in Atlanta.
Atlanta is the worst. It's worse. Oh my God!
You go to Midtown.
Yep.
Downtown Atlanta. You have that park right there, dead smack in downtown Atlanta, not the Olympic Park, whatever. The other park.
Centennial.
Right there off of Peachtree.
Piedmont?
Piedmont. Yes.
Piedmont too.
Yeah. That park right there, it is nothing but a homeless hangout. You go to GSU, there are homeless guys all over the campus there. And I mean, it is everywhere. You go to every viaduct, the 85 overpass.
So, Dr. Phoenix, you saying these are guys that are attending college?
No. There's both.
You asked me about the guy. No, I was saying that there is a problem with a number of Black males who are currently attending college who are homeless. Yeah, who are housing insecure. Yeah,
that's what I thought. I heard you
say. It's both though. It's both.
Now, you know what I was told? What I was told by the conservatives is that mentoring young boys and having programs to help young boys who are trying, who have the aptitude and the ability to move forward, that was helping Keisha. That's what I was told.
Well,
in this particular scenario, these are young Black males who certainly they're doing everything they can to be successful in this world, and so I am 100% for helping those young males. Yeah,
right. And that's what I was saying. I
don't think that doesn't help Keisha because typically this is a conversation for another time.
What I'm trying to point out is a mentality that there's people, males. I'm not gonna call them men. There's males on YouTube and social media who love to complain about the community and complain about the conditions of Black people, but they're not trying to do anything. So I'm saying is, even in situations where we have young Black males who didn't actually be born, who are busting their ass academically, they don't have enough, they don't have upgrowth of Black men who are willing to catch them and help them out. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, I'll give you a good example. Michael B. Jordan and Chadwick Boseman. I'm just using them because they're famous. They were sleeping on somebody's couch. Guess what couch they were sleeping on? Denzel Washington.
Derek Luke was sleeping in his car.
You know what I mean?
It was.
You know what I mean? You know, you had Tyra Peller's story, you know his story. So we go through things.
The other brother that
and the reason
played
why
Luke
it's
Cage,
so hard.
he's another example.
Go ahead. What was your example?
No, I was just saying the brother that played Luke Cage on Netflix.
Yep.
Yeah, he was
and
another example.
that's the things that I'm seeing as a black man, because we all came up. So those of us who are successful, we know this emotion, you know. And I kind of feel like, not to psychoanalyze a lot of our conservative brothers, but I get where I kind of understand how they got to that point, you know, as far as mentally, because they run to that pull yourself by the bootstraps because they were successful, right? Their answer is, well, you figure it out, you know, you pull yourself up, and that's not how you build out a group of people. It's a probability game. You know what I mean? We need more forward-thinking brothers to do what they can when they can. I know that we're not a rich group, but if you can help one young man, you do it.
Yeah, but also a lot of these guys are the Keisha conservatives. You know, they're not conservatives, but they're against Keisha, and a lot of them are not that. And a lot of those guys are not very successful. All right, and they put a lot of blame on their lack of success to a large extent on Keisha as well.
You're exactly. What I should have did was delineate it, because they lead.
That's what I was going to do.
They lean on, you know, the actual successful conservatives, like my man that ran for president who died recently of COVID. What's his name?
Herman Cain.
Herman Cain. He was a Herman Cain as an example, right?
Right.
Well, it won't be them. They'll use a Herman Cain as an example. You know what I mean? And say, see, you know, but the truth of the matter is, when you look at that white banker who got shot in St. Louis, right? When they had a mass shooting, there was a white banker that got shot. The Democratic mayor and the Republican governor were both mentored by him. He took both those young men as children on fishing trips. Two different parties, two different ideologies, but the same ethnic group. You understand me? That's what a lot of brothers don't understand. So there is no such thing as one rich white man or one rich, powerful white man. It doesn't exist. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Power and wealth is a group phenomenon. We got to start thinking on a lot of different levels. The issue is not vertical for us. We in America, there's always ways to get money. There's always going to be a rich Negro somewhere. The issue is horizontal. And if we're not mentally understanding that, oh, this is a young man over here needs some help him, you know what I mean, in some kind of way. Or to have, like you said earlier, with Keisha would create an organization, we don't. You know what I mean? So there's no way to say, all right, you know what, we need some tax dollars to this organization so we can help young men, right? You see what I'm saying? We're not organized. We need more of that. That's what has to happen, or if we're going to be successful as black men, no matter what part of the party you in. That's why I use that sling banker as an example in St. Louis in that mass shooting, because he's a prime example of what I'm talking about. You got two grown, old, middle-aged white men from two different parties crying over their old mentor. You see what I'm saying? Because it's not about parties for them. They're not cheerleading for each power. It's about power. They're playing a power game, and we're not.
Let me address this statement by Hoodservative. He says, if the majority of student loan debt is held by women, what the F is this even about? Well, here's the thing. If you fall under a certain federal income rate, then you also qualify for Pell Grants, right? A lot of black men qualify for Pell Grants if they make under $35,000 a year. And so you would need those Pell Grants. You would want those Pell Grants if the idea is to increase black men's numbers in certain industries. And so what Republicans have done is cut Pell Grants. This happened under the Trump administration. And so a Pell Grant is something you don't have to pay back. But this is something that greatly benefits a lot of black men who try to go to school, especially at HBCUs, which tends to be more problematic than, you know, some of your PWIs or other MSIs. And so I think that this is really relevant if you are a black man trying to advance yourself in a highly competitive society. I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah, I don't get his point of, even if it does affect the majority of women, if there's still a group of black men who are going to benefit, specifically black men who are being productive, trying to be upwardly mobile, I don't see how who it benefits in that regard makes it irrelevant. Yeah, it's a subsection of the black community that it affects, but it's affecting some of your most productive people in it. Like that should be really the real point there.
But if But if you're a Keisha conservative, which is not a real conservative, it's just a Negro who's out there, going railing against Keisha with very little information, and and rife with ignorance. This is the type of kind of responses you get, and this is the kind of mindset you're dealing with.
Yeah, just quickly to add to that, you have roughly about 25% of Black men who get undergraduate degrees, and roughly about 30%, maybe a little, give or take a couple points more, for Black women. Where it becomes greater at, so that's not a huge difference between Black men and Black women getting undergraduate degrees. Where it becomes far more of a delineation, an issue of delineation, is when it comes to graduate and professional degrees. That's where you see Black women who are overperforming as opposed to Black males. So majority of Black males are getting undergraduate degrees at roughly about the same rates as Black women. So yes, if they're coming out of undergrad with $70,000, $80,000 in student loan debt, that very much does help it. So it isn't, quote, just necessarily a issue of where Black women are holding most of student loan debt. No, it becomes when you start to look at the numbers, yeah, you have more Black women going to school than Black men. But as a whole, when it comes to undergraduate degree attainment, the numbers are generally the same, give or take a few points more for Black women. It becomes only a differentiation when you go to that graduate and doctoral level and professional degrees.
Hey, speaking of women,
And
I gotta go. My mom is visiting me right now from the States. She's here in Germany, so I gotta rock.
Hey,
But
thank you
thanks
for
having
joining
me
us.
up. Yeah, I'm gonna spend some
Jason.
time with my mama. And y'all be good, man. Thanks for the
Peace,
conversation. Keep doing what y'all
Jay,
doing on
Jay,
Brain
man.
Trust, man.
Jay
what's happening, bro?
Shine, Al Wiedersehen.
All right, go, man. All right, man. I don't want to see you out here in the streets and going either. All right. Stay in retirement.
Jay, man, hit me up on WhatsApp, bro. Hit me up on WhatsApp.
No doubt, Ryle. No, I got some stuff to show you too, man. You can be like this nigga. I know. But anyway,
yeah, Jay Shine,
right,
hit me up too, fam. Hit me up.
All right, brothers. Be good,
All
man.
right,
If I
peace.
do not talk to any of y'all, man, have a safe holidays, and I will see y'all in the new year.
Hey, thank you, brother. Same to you.
Indeed. Yeah.
Any other closing thoughts?
No, I'll probably be on vacation for the next few weeks. So, no, thank you for having me up. Really appreciate it. Everyone enjoy their holidays and have a safe new year.
Thank you, you as well.
I really don't mind these conversations, but like we got to have an agenda that doesn't revolve around people's military background and all. Like, there's several people up here with military background. Like, if we're talking about what Black men are getting out of the system, we got to get people educated on what the system is that they're trying to factor participate in. We're trying to become the people's champion of people who don't understand what's going on. Dude, I'm not trying to redo the manosphere in like the political context. I don't want to be surrounded by these people. I don't want to be outnumbered by them. That's not unreasonable to ask for. Like, look, you're going to participate in the system. You're not getting everything that you want. No one does. This is the agenda that's on the table. Pick up a shovel and get the shovel, like everybody else. Don't think that you're just going to walk in, you're going to hold the whole system hostage. The only thing you help is the actual people who don't care about whether the system works or not. But we should be way past that. Way past.
I'll say this, man, and I've said this. I've said this to numerous people. I'm not going to argue with any Black man on who's the best white man. I'm just not going to do that. Me personally, I'm not going to do that. My side is my interest. My interests are business and family. That's where I start. So for those around me that have that same kind of outlook on life, I'm going to work with you, because I know that if you focus on business, family, as far as I'm concerned, your heart's in the right direction. People who don't really care about family or business, like I really don't have time for those types of people. I just don't. I got enough on my plate. As it relates to young Black children, specifically Black males, but girls too. There are people who create scholarships in other groups for people in general, not just their own, but other people who take academic achievement seriously. And so, from that particular perspective, I know we have given a lot of attention to those who come from unfortunate backgrounds, and there are things that we can address on that level. But we're going to have to get to a point where we start giving attention to the best and brightest of our young people, because a lot of times they're getting lost in the shuffle because we're spending so much time with the people who ain't doing anything that we forget them in the process. We need to be of the mindset of creating scholarships, internships, and things like that, because like Doc Fingers was talking about, a lot of this stuff as it relates to college is about networking. Interning is a form of networking. Okay.
Yes, it is.
And when you have Black children who make good grades, but they're coming from poor Black families or Black families who really don't invest in their future economically, instead of them being able to get that internship at that tech company that allows them to build those relationships in which they can get that job, they got to go work at McDonald's to take care of themselves. Whereas the white person or Asian, whoever, who has the family money backing them so their basic needs are taken care of. Because trust me, in college, if you ain't got no money, you got to eat. Like, you got to figure out how you go eat. You know what I'm saying? And so when these young Black people, man, look at this world, man, and they see that they seeing other kids. I remember I talked to this shorty who went to Emory years ago, and I'll never forget when she said this. She was like, I used to just sit here and watch these white kids go on their family, go on their vacations to Florida and all of that type of stuff. And I was sitting here having to work, not only trying to take care of herself, but trying to take care of her mother in her 50s because she was unemployed. And this was in the late 90s. So this is a real thing. This is a real thing. And she felt some kind of way about it because in a way, there was a legitimate reason for her to. So we have to speak to those types of people, those types of young people, putting that scholarship at that particular college, because that goes a long way in terms of their development. I know I've done internships. I did AmeriCorps for 2 years. I did an internship at the governor's office in the Office of Small Business Economic Development. I made some really good connections with people. So these internships really are not just about, it's just an internship. They're networking things for students that allows them to get in their industries and fields. And a lot of young Black people who do take academic achievement seriously are not having any money in terms of scholarships and stipends out there for them to be able to take advantage of these. And they still fall behind, even though they're doing everything right. So we got to speak to those too.
All right. DC, you have anything you want to close out with?
Yeah. There was this was a good discussion. Yeah, let me just say that I wish that it could have been a little bit more constructive, as far as the disagreements, as far as with Sandog and everything, and hopefully he did not take it personal, like it appears that he did. But that's besides the point. I think that what can come out of this conversation is that you have to end up picking a side at the end of the day. Unfortunately, that is going to be tough. It's going to be some pluses and some minuses depending on how you came up and how your mind works as far as solving problems. But at the end of the day, if you understand what your identity is, what your history is, and you kind of can accept the facts being what they are, it makes it easier for you to navigate around other Black men that are productive, regardless of whether you agree on how to, your solutions or not. And that's really all that I've been about, being in this space in particular. Not necessarily the agreement part, but just the pushing it forward part, doing things that are positive. Because, like I said, just like Jay Sean said, this is a group phenomenon. We're looked at as a collective group, regardless of how we operate. We have a lot of individual successes, but at the end of the day, we're judged by the collective group. So that's what I keep in mind when I deal with politics, and I move accordingly. And hopefully, this discussion was productive, and look forward to doing something in the future, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, brothers. Thanks a lot, brothers, for allowing me to come in and share.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
joining.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
MOT.
No, what I wanted to say was, good discussion. It's just that you got to get people down about where they're at. So that way, if they're not trying to work toward any type of progress or anything else, you'll have these off-brand situations that you want to claim 9 years into actually being here. It's like, we got to be able to move the space forward. There's a lot of people who just want to come out here and hang out. That ain't us. But, we're talking about actual things that are actually happening on the ground, and trying to put your self-esteem based issues on a political party to kind of help you solve, dude, that's never going to happen, man. It's never going to happen. And you're putting people in positions that they shouldn't even be in because of it.
Nagone?
Oh yeah, hey Mike, listen, it's a wonderful conversation. I think a lot was covered, and hopefully, with Sandog, whatever, we can have him back up and and kind of do part two. But great conversation, great input from all the brothers, Chad as well. And thanks for inviting me up.
Bossman?
Yeah. No. Kind of echo what everyone said. Great discussion. I think, some people may see the sort of the conflict. Seems like, people got a little bit heated at times, but I think honestly that's to be expected with an issue like this, because I think it shows that it's near and dear to people's hearts. But more than anything, I think one thing that we sort of hit on throughout the stream in various forms is the real world implications here of what people's political movements and parties people decide to be a part of, making sure that those ideas and strategies are fundamentally sound and can be executed in a way that will be productive to Black men, Black people in general, it is vital. And when hashing that out, it will become contentious at times if people do not have their ducks in a row as far as why they're doing what they're doing, what's the outcome, what the benefits are. So to me, that's one of the big takeaways from this is that, someone said earlier that this is about people's kids, their future, as well as I think about people in the past and the sacrifices they've made and not taking that lightly. So I always appreciate these discussions, but I think they will get intense if people are not coming with all the facts or with all their information, or not with an open mind to acknowledge, changes that need to be made, or different viewpoints that may have validity. So that's all I had to add.
All right, thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button on the way out.